Hello, hello. How are we all?
Brilliant. Love the intro. Hi, guys.
Fantastic. Yeah, hello to everybody in chat. Mystery Machine, as you're no doubt already aware. How are we all doing, guys?
Not too shabby.
Yeah,
Not bad.
Better than
Not
last
bad.
week.
Bit
Yeah,
sleepy.
Yeah, no complaints.
No.
not really.
Well.
No. All seems to be of good health and sound body and mind.
We're
Just
all
give me a
still
minute, I'll
alive.
write a list.
Yeah, I was just saying just before we came on, it's like the intro seemed to be getting gradually longer and longer, and it's sort of like a goal to eventually have an intro what's like 1 hour and 55 minutes long. So we've only got to appear to sort of like sum up, and just disappear back off the screen.
The Game of Thrones starts slowly got longer and longer and longer.
You each get a 1 minute summary, then a quick 1 minute overall summary. Yeah.
I'm the Philistine on the panel because I haven't seen a single episode of Game of Thrones.
You're a monster.
No way.
I have seen odd
Yeah,
episodes, but it's not something you can really pick up in the middle of one of the seasons.
Yeah.
So I've resorted to the fact that I've got to put the time aside to start, and it's just one of those daunting tasks when you get into, like, I don't know, was it 6 seasons or something? Is it more?
I've watched it 3 times, and it's one of those series you have to take notes. It's like, American shows always have. Last time on Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is a show that actually needs that. For normally Americans seem to need a recap every 30, 40 seconds. They even have recaps after adverts sometimes in some of their shows. But Game of Thrones really needs it. And they're going, who the hell is that character? A character will disappear. Sorry, this is a complete rant. A character will disappear for like 3 series. And then just
do you know what I find funny? I find funny that you've just said that. However, we sort of have even weirder where we have a reminder instantly after the adverts to remind us what show we're watching. Don't we? It normally says, part 2 of whatever it is we're watching. So are we as bad? Maybe. And some of you might think, I knew Dave was going to say that. And is that because you predicted it? Are you all Nostradamus out there in the side chat? Nostradamus? Because there's no such thing as Nostradamuses. So obviously, you've got an idea what we're talking about. So not just Nostradamus, other things, because a couple of the guys have got some good ones. There's been other sort of like predictive kind of things alluded to throughout the years in TV, in films, and all sorts of other wonderful things like that. There's been other charlatans. Soothsayers and seers over the years. So we'll chat about a few of them too. We'll go through some of Nostradamus's quatrains. I already forgot who he was there, by the way. Nostradamus's quatrains, and see what we think of him. And it's sort of like retrospectively allocated meanings to a lot of the quatrains. But I suppose if you're going to predict something's going to come true, if it doesn't come true, then by default it's not a prediction anyway. So they have to be retrospective. But anyway, I bored myself with that. So should we briefly talk about Nostradamus before we start going into the weird stuff? Do you think that's weird? Does anybody want to take this one?
I've written a great deal.
There he is.
I had a feeling you might.
Yeah. Before we started doing I'm so glad you said quantro things, because I wasn't sure how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
So basically, 1521 was the first earliest thing I could find about him. That he went to university, but the university was shut by the plague. So the plague turned up in the university, so he got kicked out. If you're going to get knocked out, that's what university students went through last year, wasn't it? They had to all go home because of the plague.
That was just the freshers' flu of the day, wasn't it?
The freshers.
Yeah, just the equivalent of.
Yeah.
So by his own accounts, he then spent the next 8 years wandering around, learning about herbal remedies and things like this. And it sounds like he literally just wandered around some woods for like 8 years. He then went to Montpellier.
Wandered across Europe, didn't he? I think.
Yeah, I was just like poking mushrooms for 8 years, I think. He went to Montpellier to study to become a doctor, but he was immediately expelled. Because he had been working as there's another word I can't say.
An apothecary.
Apothecary, thank you. Which is like an unqualified herbal doctor, basically. But this was considered a manual trade by the university and was on their banned lists. They kicked him out immediately. He'd been there like about a week. Even though he then continued to call himself a doctor for long periods. 1545, he assisted Louis Serre in tackling a plague outbreak in Marseille.
Yes.
He then decided that he could deal with that on his own and dealt with several other plague outbreaks in and around the bottom of France. He got married.
He did.
It's unclear what that first woman's name was. He got married again, second time round, and he bought a 1/13 share in a canal project with his second wife, which he financially did very well out of, apparently.
Yeah, well, when he first, sorry, brother, when he first married, that was in 1531, and his wife and 2 children both died in 1534 because of a newer plague outbreak, and that's when he worked as a plague doctor and remarried Anne Ponsard, and they had 6 children together.
There's a reason why I didn't say her name.
On his travels, wasn't it, around Europe, was the plague outbreak and his family dying. That kind of, I suppose, made him have a...
While he was away, yeah.
Yeah, while he was away, he came back and they'd all passed away. So I suppose you lost your entire family. I guess a lot of people use work, don't they, to sort of get away from it. So probably wanted something to focus on, I guess.
Well, without any training, unfortunately.
Yeah.
If only get a vaccine. But anyway, in 1550, he then wrote his first almanac, which is basically a book following the popular trends of the time. That book had some success, so he began writing regular almanacs. That then led into his prophecies. That is a very, very brief rundown of the early life of Nostradamus. What was his actual name originally? Because he started calling himself Nostradamus, didn't he?
Michel de Notre Dame.
Yeah, Michel de Nostradamus,
Yeah. None of us are attempting the French accent, aren't we? Michel de Nostradamus.
I was born in Saint-Remy de Provence in France. And just interesting. Well, is it interesting? I suppose we'll find out. His quatrains were written in a few different languages. The idea being that it would put, if you like, the Inquisition off the scent of him being a heretic. And it was Greek, Italian, Latin, and Provençal, which is a local dialect to the region he was born in. And he says that the experts say that experts, I love that word, that the quatrains were wrote in the way that they were made to deliberately obscure their obvious meanings due to potential religious opposition. So he would often use anagrams and misspellings within his own quatrains.
Yeah, he used word games, metaphors, things like this, didn't he?
Didn't that seem to be
like a code?
It was very prevalent in that time, though, wasn't it? Because we're led to believe that. What was it like? The Priory of Science, the one that Leonardo da Vinci was the Grand Master of. That's a sort of similar sort of time, isn't it? The 1500s, secret societies. They were using a lot of different languages. Scientists have been persecuted by the church for being heretics for quite a while. So I imagine quite a lot of intellect had created quite a lot of different means of communicating whilst hiding their communications.
He was very worried about being accused of being anti-Catholic, wasn't he? And that he might get his neck stretched.
He did have 1 or 2 run-ins with the church that I believe. Where is it?
He wasn't.
Well, he served obviously.
Short, briefly, wasn't
he? He absolutely was. Yeah, in 1561 in Marignan for publishing an almanac without prior permission from a bishop, which goes against a royal decree. Apparently, so this is obviously after, it had the success of the 1550 almanac, and proceeded to publish them annually after that date. And then when it came to 1561, he must have forgot to notify the local diocese of what was going on. They weren't happy about that, of course, and slammed him in a cell for a while.
It was only really the royal family that kind of saved him. I'm not jumping ahead too far with that, but the Catherine de Medici was the wife of Henry II of France, basically. Because after he started writing all these almanacs and he started making all these prophecies that we're going to talk about, he did have famous people, royalty and lords and things, start asking him to do aristocrats, to start doing these basically the horoscopes for him and these birth charts and things that apparently he used to get the birth charts wrong all the time. He used to get all the calculations wrong and things, apparently.
He used to get them to bring their own birth charts, didn't he? I think that was a prerequisite for his astrology, wasn't it?
But yeah, when he did do the birth chart, so he kept getting the math wrong apparently from the birth dates and things.
Okay.
But
what you got to about yourself is just because he was bad at maths, that doesn't mean he can't see into the future.
Surely you'll be able to see into the future, though. To
I'm getting the word.
know that he got it wrong.
Do you not find that anybody that can normally do something extraordinary with their mind normally has an extraordinary grasp of mathematics, though?
No.
Yeah.
Generally, that tends to go hand in hand.
crap at maths,
I
mate.
tend
I'm
to
actually
find.
genius. I mean,
Now
my mind is absolutely
now you mention
phenomenal,
it,
but I can barely.
now
add
you
two and
mention
two.
it. Yeah. Now you mention it. No. Never noticed that ever. It's just games, people. That's all. So yeah, the almanac, as we just said, like not just Catherine de Medici, King Henry II, and some other person as well. It'll be down in the notes. Have a look. Who are you, fella? Charles IX of France. So lots of French people involved in this particular one, which won't come as a massive surprise, since that's where he's from. He suffered from gout for years as well, the poor fella. And in 1566, that turned into edema, which ultimately cost him his life. And on the evening of the 1st of July, he told his secretary, Jean de Chavigny, "You will not find me alive at sunrise." And he was found dead the following morning.
Yeah,
He'd done quite well for himself, though, in that time. I mean, he rewrote his will just before his death, and was able to basically bequeath his wife an equivalent of £300,000 today, 3,444 crowns that were supposed to be kept in trust for his sons when they turned 2025. So he'd been able to do reasonably well for himself over the years, writing horoscopes for people. I wonder how much money Mystic Meg's got. I reckon she's worth.
I reckon she's probably worth about £2.50.
Yeah, probably now.
Today's money. The lottery ticket. Yeah, ironic that.
It's like, was it? What was
She's
the?
actually a multi-millionaire. She invested in Apple when it was.
Was it Brian Conley who done a thingy of and called himself Septic Peg? Septic Peg.
It's a puppet.
I had more faith in Septic Peg than I did in Mystic Meg, but just in case she ever watches this, Meg, we love you, baby.
I don't. Be specific. Give me the lottery numbers. Don't some crap about meeting somebody new.
Yeah.
I only ever think of Family Guy when you say Meg. It's the only connotation for that name, really.
It's the only Meg I've ever heard of.
I work with a Meg.
You would.
Someone's got to, haven't they?
It's quite interesting though that Nostradamus being or writing a book called Prophecies and containing lots of prophecies, predicted his own death.
Yeah.
That, if there is one thing that you go, well, if he could really predict the future, how didn't he know he was about to die? Well, he did.
He did, yes.
So
allegedly,
he has got that argument for him in terms of predicting the future, hasn't he? Most people that have claimed to do that haven't seen it coming. They've ended up, dead and not predicted their own death with a lot of others. So he does stand out amongst others for that sole reason.
That's one way of looking at it.
Okay, so that's like you said, he's known for. He's known mainly, of course, for his 942 poetic quatrains. Basically, a series of hundreds poems, which are in four-liners, and because they're in groups of 100, known as centuries of quatrains. And the quatrains are, like I say, 4 lines, so four-line poems, basically, of which he done many predicting the future. And well, that's what he's famous for, really, isn't it? That's the big one for him, is his quatrains. But the other bits are there for you. Should you be interested in them? So you've got a little bit of a background on what Nostradamus was all about, or rather who he was. So he's obviously infamous for his predictions that in modern times, more, if you like, more recent things tend to be the big ones what people have latched onto, which is understandably so. But he made many over the years. The French Revolution, various kings and royalty coming into power, and so on and so forth. But we'll concentrate on a couple of the big ones. So I'll put up a thing, and I'll read out one or two of the quatrains, and us guys will throw it about a bit, and then we're going to move on to some other type of stuff, maybe Mothership Turn and other things. And like I said, the TV type of predictions, things that you see on TV that have come to pass, because some of them are interesting, notably The Simpsons, which we'll no doubt go into. So should we do this in order? Let's have a quick look. I suppose we'll go back to, well, we'll put up the Great Fire of London. So let's have a look at the Great Fire of London. I'm just knocking them out somewhere. It is. Now he was a pretty much, in the eyes of a lot of people of his time, classed as being evil or a heretic. Or as a fake, yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. He was seen as being a fake, wasn't he, by a lot of people? You think he sees as being a fake now? Well, there you go. Well, when it comes to the Fire of London, one of the quatrains, two of the lines of that particular quatrain are the most important ones, which I will read out now, which is, "The blood of the just will be demanded of London, burnt by the fire in the year 1666.
Was that actually written?
What's allegedly written? Well, you see, there's been. Well, this is the thing. You see, all of it's modern translations, but the nearest people can come to what's actually supposed to be down in the original, Les Prophecies book, was, "The blood of the just will be demanded of London, burnt by the fire in the year 66. Now, the Great Fire of London, as any historians and any people will know, was 1666.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, it was coincidence. What do you think, guys?
I'm just trying to think. What year in the 15th century was the prophecies written? It was 1555. Was it?
I think so.
So you would have had a year 66 in the 1566, wouldn't you, before the 1666? So if he was saying the year 66, you'd expect, if it was in a text that was prior to 1566, you'd mean 1566, not a century later.
Possibly, but he died in 66, and he knew he was going to die.
Allegedly,
yeah.
So wouldn't
he? I'd want to see exactly what he wrote in the first one. I'm not an interpretation of this. I mean, are we going to mention the Iraq War in a bit? Because that was, again, it was a poetic statement he made, and people have then interpreted since. The only thing I can think about, it's not relevant at all, but it just made me think about it, that the Great Fire of London 1666 is kind of why we now think that the Mark of the Beast is 666. Because it was actually a mistranslation. The Mark of the Beast is actually 616. So all these people getting really upset about bloody patent numbers 666 in certain vaccines really need to learn their history, because that's not the Mark of the Beast. It really winds me up every time you see those memes on bloody Facebook. But it was actually down to this event that was popularized 666 being the Mark of the Beast. If he wrote that down and he put it down as the blood of thing, and obviously this was just after the plague as well, those big plagues in London at the time. The Fire of London is one of the reasons why the plague was burned out of Britain in some ways. He could have been talking about the fire. It could have just been a coincidence.
He strictly look, it's not so much the interpretation of what the words are, it's the interpretation of how accurate it was in the prediction, because it does say, this isn't open for conjecture, he does say the blood of the just will be demanded of London, burnt by the fire in the year 66.
So that's pretty close, isn't it?
What I'm saying is, it's not a case of we don't know what he wrote. That is exactly what he wrote. Yeah. It's how people interpret the predictions, obviously. And like I said, he said the blood of the just will be demanded of London, burnt by the fire in the year 66. So he named the city, he named the way it was partially destroyed, and the year.
And the year.
Yeah. And we tend to do that, don't we? We tend to say the 60s, the 70s.
That's a good point. That's a good point, yeah.
So the fact that he's not said 1666 doesn't really bother me.
I mean, he could have been a bit more vague and named the decade, and then if you name a decade in a century, see what I mean? If you name a year in a century, you've got a 1% chance. If you name a decade in a century, you've got a 10% chance.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? That you'd increase your
Yeah, yeah.
chances substantially by naming a decade rather than a year, tenfold.
And fires were common back in the day, but there's a reason why we've heard of the Great Fire of London, is because it was one of the most significant blazes of its type ever. You know, so I mean, that's pretty creepy.
I have to confess that it's a bit bang on, that one, isn't it?
It's a bit
I mean, there were some concerns, weren't there, leading up to the Fire of London about all of the wooden buildings that were being constructed in London. Because hadn't they had like smaller fires than the fire in London in London before because of the wooden construction, and they were like they'd stopped using wood for a while and gone more to other materials because of that, and then they'd slip back, haven't they, towards the wood again, and then that obviously. So if you were looking at sort of construction in London, you could perhaps sense that a fire was inevitable, but to be able to predict a specific year in a century,
that's a bit more difficult.
1%.
On top of which, not only, you see, because a lot of people are saying it was sort of surprising exactly how fiercely it burnt and how much damage it done, and contemporary reports of the time sort of like put the death toll at like somewhere, and some reports say 4, some reports say 8, which is completely ridiculous given the amount of people that were displaced and died of disease afterwards. And a lot of modern experts tend to think that it's more in the thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people that actually died during it, because it wasn't just wood. This is on the docks. A big chunk of this was on the docks. You've got oils, you've got pitch, tar, all sorts of explosives that were being stored. There was all sorts of things, spices. It wasn't just wood. So there was a lot of things there to sort of like stoke this fire, which went on for 3 days. I believe it. In the third day, it pretty much burnt itself out. I was pretty much done and dusted, but. He, you know, like we say, three of the big things in them two. I mean, for 2 sentences, he nailed 3 things.
Yeah,
it is. Yes, there's quite a lot of factual accuracy given the length of the prediction.
Like I say, fires were reasonably common. I mean, Rome burned down a couple of times, didn't it?
Yeah,
and it was razed to the ground over time. So you could argue that, but it's very difficult to argue that when he's actually named the year. He doesn't just say London will burn down at some point, because you could say, well, yeah, okay, that was probably bound to happen. He's gone.
Yeah,
London will
several
burn down
decades
in
from
66.
now, there'll be a great fire in London, and the good men will be killed trying to combat it. That would be a vaguer version, wouldn't it, of it? And it would you definitely get that right, because in how many decades is several 5, 10 decades, 15. If you can step that year range out to 50 to 150 years, you're much more likely, but very specific, isn't it?
Okay, well, the next one is he predicted Napoleon. So I'll pick up a picture of everybody's favourite general,
Napoleon
and the Napoleon one. No, the little corporal, yeah, one of 2 little corporals actually throughout history. That was a bit of a shyster. We'll bring up the next one later. But Napoleon,
is he a Nostradamus? Did Nostradamus predict him as well? Just out of curiosity.
He did.
I don't think I've read this one.
Well, Napoleon. This is where we started. This is where one of his famous anagrams comes in. Or he does a play on words. But I'll go into it. I'll read this one out. This is from Century 8. This is the first quatrain in Century 8, and it says, "Par ne Laurent will be more of fire than of the blood, to swim in praise. The great one to flee to the confluence, he will refuse entry to the Piaces. The depraved ones and the Durants will keep them imprisoned." Okay, so bear with me on this one. So we used the anagram Par ne Laurent, which when rearranged becomes Napoleon or Napoleon Roy, which translates to Napoleon the King, which was given the Corsican spelling of Napoleon's name, Napoleon. It also describes him as being a man of fire, which means a man of war, rather than of the blood, which means not of royal lineage. So a man of fire who will come through war or conflict, who isn't royal of the blood, even though he's a king. The Piaces, which he mentions in the third line, is the Pope Pius VI and Pope Pius VII, who were both imprisoned by Napoleon which is what he puts in the fourth line of the quatrain. The depraved ones and the Durants will keep them imprisoned. So thoughts on that ones, boys?
Again, it's very specific elements. I mean, I know we're messing around with words a little bit, but it's very coincidental that if an anagram of his name. Again, we're looking back on it. Is the problem? It's I mean, there's so many prophecies. It's difficult to explain, though, isn't it? At the end of the day, but it's looking at it in reverse is the problem.
Well, like we said just before we came on. Sorry, brother. Just before came on, we sort of said it's always going to be retrospective, and like I said at the beginning of the stream, it has to be with hindsight or looking back, because until an event's happened, which you can say he predicted that. Something has to happen which you can sort of attribute to being relative to one of the quatrains. So we're always going to be doing that backwards looking thing, because we don't know what the event is until it happens. We can read his quatrains, but they won't make sense, because that's the sort of beauty of the way that he wrote them, if you like, is they don't make any sense when you know what's happened, let alone if you don't know what's happened, So,
especially with the secretive nature of hiding the message, and particularly in that one, obviously using the Corsican version of the word Napoleon in the anagram, that he then, which is
interesting, Damo, considering that not only had Napoleon not even been born yet, but a lot of people think Napoleon's French.
He's not.
They don't even know he's Corsican.
Yes, very much so. So that it does that extra level of detail there again. I suppose going to the retrospective point, I was going to say, you're only ever going to analyse retrospectively the ones that have a relatively higher percentage of predicting accurately, because if they make a lot of predictions but none of them come true, they're just they were just writing rubbish, weren't they? They were just making here's another one.
Strap yourself in.
It out of the air, just imagining it and making things up. And time has shown that they've got maybe 0.1% of their predictions right or something. Whereas I imagine if you analysed all of Nostradamus's predictions, I imagine it's a very much higher percentage frequency of those predictions coming.
It is indeed, yeah. He's fairly naughty.
Or is it that we make his vague predictions? I mean, obviously we've picked two here that aren't vague. But is it going to be that it could be that all of his predictions are accurate? We've just got to figure out what he meant by them.
Very good point. Very good point.
None of them are accurate, and we're just attaching history to clues, and we're making things fit.
Yeah. A possibility, however, when obviously we're going to go into a couple more. He's good. And there's a reason he's as well known as he is, that's for sure. Anyway, Steve, thoughts? What do you think about the Napoleon one?
Like James said, it's extremely difficult to sort of say, but it's there, isn't it? He said what he said, and the anagram of the name and things like that, and just his accuracy as well. It has to be questioned, but I don't think we'll ever fully understand. Like you said before, until something's happened, we can't sort of take it on board and look at it, if that makes sense.
You've got no basis.
It does make sense.
Judge his predictions. You can't judge a prediction until that predicted event has occurred.
Yeah, that's it. Very much so.
Okay, so that was Napoleon. Let's move on to another one and try to keep it in order. Let me have a look at my list of milky sweet goodness. He did, I don't even know why I said that. He did do a few of these things. Obviously, that. Let's bring it up a little bit to more recent times. Let's have here we go. I suppose we'd be very remiss if we didn't cover this gentleman. So we're going to do. Let me stick up a picture. Here we go. Okay. So, of course, famous for Hitler. So I'll read out the Hitler ones. So there's a few of these, so you'll have to bear with me on this one. So he knew, and the wars, by the way, he also predicted the both world wars. You got to remember a lot of the other ones that we haven't even covered. He's sort of almost doing him a disservice, but obviously we haven't got time for it. We want to cover other things to do with predictions and seeing into the future, of course. He predicted many other royalties coming into power, lots of other things, famines, different things going on around the world. He was all over it, if you believe retrospective thinking and attributing them to the meanings of his poems. Then he was nailing all of these. But in regards to Hitler, I know there's a little bit of a quote there, but I'll start off. And this is century number 3, quatrain 35. It says, "From the deepest part of Western Europe, a young child will be born to poor people, who will by his speech seduce a great multitude. His reputation will increase in the kingdom of the East." He also said, "Beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Hester. Into a cage of iron will the great one be drawn when the child of Germany observes nothing." Bear with me. He also says, "Liberty will not be regained. It will be occupied by a black, proud, villainous, and unjust man. When the matter of the pontiff is opened, the Republic of Venice will be vexed by Hester." And his fourth one about Hitler, we think, was, "The shocking and infamous armed one will fear the great furnace. First the chosen one, the captives not returning. The world's lowest crime, the angry female Israel, not at ease. Barb, Hester, Malta, and the empty one does not return." Now, before you comment, I will just say this. So we're obviously attributing Hester as being Hitler, but not just by his name, but by his birthplace. Because Hester is also the Latin name for the river Danube, on the shores of which Hitler was born.
Mm-hmm.
The first quatrain sort of like provides a general background because his parents were poor. He also says, "Who will by his speech seduce a great multitude? His reputation will increase in the kingdom of the East." Right. Now, his power as a speaker, as an orator, he's infamous for that, isn't he? You've seen, lots of people have seen his video footage. He did seduce the entire Germany just by, well, not just by speech, you know, but it did raise a lot of national fervor behind it. I almost made that comment then. And of course, by the way that he spoke, he had a massive influence over the kingdom of Japan. He also wooed over the Russians, initially the Soviets, with Molotov agreement. Before Operation Barbarossa and so on and so forth. So there's a couple of things in there that you can sort of see a direct correlation with. So that being the case, guys, what do you reckon?
I think the obvious link to the captives that don't return, then mention Israel, the lowest crime, things like this.
That's a huge point, Jamie. Israel. It mentions Israel. Israel was a state created after the Second World War by the British and the French in order to give the Jews a homeland, wasn't it? After the many deaths in the concentration camps. How did he know that land was going to exist?
Did Germany exist in 1550?
Was it
the Holy Roman Empire did? It was part of the Holy Roman Empire. It was lots of different states that come under the Holy Roman Empire.
Like France, wasn't it? That it was lots of different states. I'm not even. I mean, it was known as the Germanic region.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So,
because of Germanicus.
Well, our language is Germanic based as well. So, I mean, the region.
I mean, Germanicus was the Roman leader of that area who looked after that part of the.
So that's interesting. I mean, there's lots of things in there again that I think he could have been talking about any conflict necessarily, but then when he brings up things like the Israel thing, I mean, he mentioned the iron cage or something, was it? I forget the wording he used.
1 second.
I'm thinking there about how
into a cage of iron will the great one be drawn.
So that makes me think tanks and things, to be honest,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like how it was the first fully mechanized conflict, how he was the first one to really, or his generals were the first ones to really come up with the Blitzkrieg.
The Blitzkrieg, yeah.
A completely new type of tactic of warfare.
Referring to the metal bunker where he supposedly took his life, suicide.
Yeah,
with,
I thought that.
Was it?
He's in Argentina.
Was it Eva Braun? Was it his other half?
It was.
That right?
Yeah, married her, killed her within about 12 hours.
Can you imagine that? I know we only got married yesterday, but suicide pact today?
Yeah. Are you up for it, darling? Love you. Yeah, you could just imagine it. I've got an absolutely brilliant idea for a honeymoon, darling.
Yeah. It's going to be a bang.
It's not going to be a week. It's not going to be 2 weeks.
Cyanide or 9mm parabellum, you choose. You know,
it's a forever honeymoon.
He's in Argentina.
Oh.
Well, he's in Argentina now. He'd be about 150. But
I reckon he was.
Well, there's one thing that's definitely we're definitely sure of. He's dead now, even if he didn't die.
He's definitely dead now.
Suicide.
He's on the moon with all his cloned Hitlers.
Yeah, brilliant film.
Loads of little Hitlers running around. Such a good film, that Iron Sky. I wasn't expecting it to be good, but it's brilliant.
So anyway. he did predict both wars as well, and I didn't really want to hit us with too many of these. I got another couple, but I sort of maybe should have done those, because when you read the way that I described them, you sort of see that it alluded to somebody as a leftover from the First World War would come into great power and cause a load of trouble because of that. And of course, Hitler was a corporal in a Bavarian regiment in the First World War, was gassed, wounded, and so on, and was massively disappointed with the surrender. In fact, he used the French surrendered back to him in 1940 in the same train carriage at Champagne. That the Germans surrendered that the armistice was signed in after the First World War. So he obviously he was holding a grudge, this fella. I think it's safe to say that.
Rightfully so. They only finished paying reparations about 8 years ago, the Germans. They were still paying us until about a decade ago, because we stuck reparations on them of 5 billion back in the day when, we may as well have said, you owe us 50 billion squillion. It wasn't a real amount of money, 50 billion in reparations.
Ironically, they've built up the German economy to be the powerhouse of Europe, paid back that unfathomable debt, and are now clear of it, and are now pretty much the leaders of the European Union. But anyway, isn't it funny how times change in 70 years?
They took over Europe a different way.
I would love to. What I really want to do is learn German well enough so I can listen to some of Hitler's early speeches, because to get people behind him like he did, he couldn't have been crazy from the offset. He couldn't have been talking about putting the Jews in the concentration camps in the first speeches, because no one listened to him. He'd got no support. So he must have been talking up some crazy stuff about him and how what he's going to do for the German people. And did you know what I mean? Like, in order to get that level of support before then, tipping into crazy land.
He preyed on people's emotions rather than their brain. People were starving. When he
they were living off Swedes and parsnips, weren't they, and black bread.
Exactly. Unemployment was like 70%. It was ridiculous. So he gave everybody a job and built the motorways that they then built their empire off.
The Autobahn.
But also, people were really pissed off about the Treaty of Versailles. Germany wasn't really defeated at the end of World War One. They were just the first ones to sort of go, "This is mad. We really need to stop doing this." And they sort of had this armistice, thinking that there would be, an agreement and a fair deal. And then we just went, no, and we're going to break your country up and we're going to treat you like you lost. But they never. So people were really pissed.
Yeah, well, I mean, fundamentally, when you look at it, while they didn't lose, they couldn't win, and they knew that. You had the arrival. The arrival of all the Americans, obviously coming over in 1917. 1917. War started in 14, just saying. They come over them. For any of our German friends, I just want to say, vielen Dank für nett kommunizieren. Und ich hoffe, wir treffen uns auf an deren Band der Betriebsdaten wieder, lieber.
Yeah.
I listen to Hitler. I'm only playing with you people. It's a game.
Okay,
we'll move on
wish
to,
yes, I wish I could speak German fluently. Unfortunately, I can't. I can, I can understand a little bit, but.
So we got a little bit of
suspicious spies around here. 9.
What, nine spies?
Oh, Blackadder.
That many? That many for one little secret?
It's as hot as my pants. I sent an email to my boss the other week. I said, I've got a plan, and it's as hot as my pants, and sent it, and then thought, I hope he watched Blackadder. I sound like a freak. He did.
Did you get a reply?
And then you're like, you watch Blackadder? Yeah. Oh, that's all right then. You had to have that conversation there, didn't you? Because you were wondering if you were going to have an even weirder conversation. If not, yeah.
Mate, there might have been some forms filled in.
Okay, so he also predicted the assassinations of the Kennedys. So a couple of the Kennedys ones there for you. And there's Century 6, Quatrain 37. He said, the ancient work will be accomplished, and from the roof evil ruin will fall on the great man. They will accuse an innocent being dead of the deed. The guilty one is hidden in the misty copse. The other quatrain, which is about, the great man will be struck down in the day by a thunderbolt. The evil deed predicted by the bearer of a petition. According to the prediction, another falls at night. Conflict in Reims, London, and pestilence in Tuscany. Okay, so going to the first one. Obviously, Lee Harvey Oswald was reputed to have shot Kennedy from the 6th floor of the book depository. Is that the roof, what's being mentioned in the second line of the first quatrain there? Or is the roof a metaphor for the conspiracy performed by the CIA regarding bringing it about? Previously, Kennedy's protection, or his roof. And it also suggests that Lee Harvey Oswald was, in fact, innocent. And the misty wood of the fourth line can describe either the trees around the grassy knoll or the misty woods of the Secret Service. And in relation, before I pass it over to you guys, obviously, is for the second one, is it says JFK was shot in the day at 12 noon, and his brother Robert Kennedy was shot at night, 1 a.m. And like it says, it's like, according to the prediction, another falls at night. Okay. The last line dates the assassination because there were student riots in London and Paris in 1968. And also the conspiracy theory about Kennedy's assassination is also alluded to in another quatrain, which I didn't put down, but I should have done, because he sort of mentions that people will doubt the manner at which the great man was killed. Anyway, guys, what do you think?
Wow.
Again, it's a bit like the Hitler one here, though, isn't it? That we're putting that onto Hitler. But to be honest, if you said this is to do with Stalin, it would fit just as well, really. I mean, Stalin killed a crap load of Jews as well, and
actually, good point. Stalin probably in the same period killed probably 3 times as many people, didn't he, than Hitler? But we always talk about the next evil person being the next Hitler. Do you know what I mean? Well, not the next Jojo or the next.
Just the greater. Not really. Sorry, I just got to jump in because if you read the quatrains about what we think is about Hitler, not really, because the way that it says, the greater part of the battlefield will be against Hister. So that wouldn't be relative to Stalin.
Yeah, if you're assuming that means Hitler.
It also mentions, doesn't it? Also mentions Western Europe, doesn't it, and Germany specifically, or Germanic
specifically.
And beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the rivers. Now, if you look at the amount of rivers, the Don, the Vistula, the Danube, and others that I can't, the Dnieper and other rivers, there were multiple amounts of rivers had to be crossed just in the first week of Operation Barbarossa alone. And these were all these
had to cross them back when they reinvaded. Though. I mean, they stopped at the river for the east-west. Anyway, but my point was that. Could there be other people or other events that this would fit? I think if we probably looked for it, probably could.
I get what you're saying with this one. It's a bit vague with the great man. It's not very specific, does it? It doesn't name. It doesn't say a Kennedy, or it doesn't say even referencing by his first name, perhaps, which would be I suppose more easy to guess than someone's surname, perhaps, if you'd reference that. It just says a great man, which is more vague, isn't it, than
we haven't got the specific sort of fact that makes you go, "Ooh," like we have with maybe the other two, like the 66 or the some of the Hitler references that seem a lot closer. This seems a little vaguer.
Yeah,
but,
the date is only an implication of the fact of the riots, isn't it? That are also mentioned in there. That it's not actually.
But of course, how would he know about those riots?
Well, of course.
How would he know about those riots occurring on the same day as one of two great men get killed, one in the day and one in the night?
Again, that limits the thing. Obviously, the Kennedy's assassinations were a few years apart, but was it 2 years apart? Something like that.
4.
4. So
I
mean,
just over 4, yeah.
But it does. Yeah, you're right though. It does bring it down. It does make it more difficult to sort of just dismiss. The great man struck down by a thunderbolt. That's very vague. That could be lots of people, I think. Evil deed foretold by the bearer of a petition. I'm not sure what that's getting to, but is that going to be something to do with Oswald and his?
I was just thinking that, Jay. When he was doing his support Cuba stuff, handing out the pamphlets and such. Yeah.
According to the prediction, another falls at night. Yeah, that I can see that link. Again, it's vague, but I can see the link. It's the conflicts in Reims, London, and pestilence in Tuscany. That's interesting. Was there a pestilence in Italy at the time? Or
I assume that
there was stuff going down.
Yeah,
was that like a famine? Basically, is it a pestilence in Tuscany at that time? So they're hungry, starving.
And Tuscany is a poorer part of Italy, so that probably was.
It tends to be.
This one's a little vague.
Milan's quite rich, isn't it? And then it tends to be you get the poor villages, don't you, in the south of Italy? Is that where Tuscany, I believe, is located?
Yeah, nice wine.
Like the first quatrain of it, the interesting one, I suppose, though, is the ancient work will be accomplished, and from the roof evil ruin will fall on the great man. They will accuse an innocent being dead, meaning the innocent will be dead. They will accuse him of the deed, and the guilty one is hidden in the misty copse. Now, one of the famous photos if you look into the Kennedy assassination is the so-called badge man on the grassy knoll, what looks like smoke from the rifle of a, doesn't it? Do you know where I'm going with it?
Yeah.
Which sort of partially obscures the image.
I mean, if you believe obviously the conspiracy theories about JFK, which we do because we spoke about it for about 4 hours, that and I wonder if the roof thing was maybe there was a rifle, maybe the shooter was actually on the roof above Oswald, which is something we did sort of discuss at the time that there may have been another. If I was going to do the JFK thing, I would want the shooter to be roughly the same trajectory and position as Oswald. I wouldn't set him on the grassy knoll or somewhere else. I'd want him so that when you shot Kennedy, the
plausible
would
that
look
it
about
came
right
from the 3rd floor of the book depository.
I'd be a couple of floors above him or a couple of floors below him myself.
That's another good one.
Maybe the shooter was on the roof. Maybe it is literal.
I think there were probably multiple shooters on that day. I think we did come to that.
All right, let's not get into that again, mate. Just go back and have a look at the video we did on
right, okay. That's you got to be careful with that one. So obviously, I'll do another one though. I'll do another quatrain, and then maybe we'll move on to other bits and bobs of stuff. Various other so-called predictions and people that claim to be mystical, magical, and mythical. Other kind of ethicals and cults that we won't go into. And this one is New York. Okay.
New York.
So I'll read a couple out. You can obviously see the one that's on the screen. But he referred to more than once in his quatrains a great city. 45. He says that he would describe a great city in the New World of America near 45 degrees latitude, and near enough, all experts seem to agree that it can only mean New York. Okay, so I'll read a couple of them out. I know you can see one there, but he said, "By fire he will destroy their city, a cold and cruel heart. Blood will pour, mercy to none." And then, of course, earth-shaking fire from the center of the earth will cause the towers around the new city to shake. 2 great rocks for a long time will make war, and then Arethusa will colour a new river red. Discuss, guys. What do you think?
2 rocks fighting. That's a link. I would almost argue the first part of that, though, sounds more like the American response to 9/11. I think, like 3,000 people died on 9/11. Their response in Iraq killed 100,000 innocent people.
I imagine in the 20 years since 9/11, it's probably caused the end of life for probably countless millions. I would imagine
millions, but yeah,
I'd probably go. Yeah, you think about everywhere America's invaded and occupied since '99, and think
in
about
the year '99 is obviously wrong, but he's not far off, is he?
Yeah,
it's only a couple of years off. The Great King of Terror. That's.
There's an interesting thing. There was a side note there, isn't there? That they had the plan in the works for 9/11 for a number of years, and May had to move the date to coincide with the world events.
Before and after Mars to reign by good fortune. I assume Mars being the god of war. So that's true. And again, when we talked about 9/11, one of the things we talked about was that maybe this was organized by elements of or allowed to happen by elements of the American military industrial complex, because they made a crap load of money following 9/11.
War equals profits, peace equals no profits. So what do you encourage?
Good fortune, then. They made it rain. They were like, woo, for years after 9/11. But the two stones thing, that's difficult to dismiss. Again,
and the towers
pretty much bang on the money.
The towers above the new city, multiple, not the tower, the towers above the new city.
And there aren't
many
examples of buildings like the Twin Towers where there are two exactly the same buildings.
Yeah, that's right.
They're twins of each other. They don't really do that much, do they? That was, I suppose, the point of those two when they were built, weren't they? They're to be, skyscrapers, highest in the city at that point, weren't they? And
briefly,
they're like the showcase of the city's wealth, really, aren't they?
And they were iconic before 9/11. I mean, if you think about Friends and things like this, all the TV shows, they always used to pan across and focus in on the Twin Towers.
Anything based in New York, absolutely. Manhattan skyline.
The Twin Towers was prominent.
I was in New York in 1999, and it may well have been in the summer of '99. So the 7th month of '99, I was probably in one of those two towers, as well as visiting other New York landmarks like the Empire State. And
I'm just thinking that.
Yeah. I'm very glad
thinking that, Jay. And you're glad Nostradamus was a little bit out on that one, Damien.
Well, yeah, but maybe that was the original plan date. Maybe 7799 was the original plan date, and they had to change it. And we all have looked into this conspiracy regarding 9/11, and do think there are some remarkable inconsistencies from the powers that be.
Jackie Chan was in on it. Bloody Jackie Chan. He was supposed to be filming that day, and it got cancelled last minute because Jackie Chan was in on it.
Very lucky man as well.
Bringing back to life the great king of the Mongols. In that time, Europe would cast eyes to the east, and the idea of Islam and the religions that they practiced over there were classed as the belief of the Mongols or the hordes from the east. So I think that's the reference that they're referring to in that one.
I was going to ask that because the Mongols. It was making me think of obviously Mongolia and the empire, the Mongolian Empire back in the day, Genghis Khan. But obviously that isn't relevant to this. So that's more just the Eastern way of life that it's referring to, is it then?
Like the basically
religion. So Islam, without specifically stating
sort
Islam.
of that sort of because they were looked at obviously as being barbaric Philistine by the Christian world, which was obviously massively prevalent. You got to remember in the 16th century, that was their kind of outlook on anything that wasn't Christian or Catholic.
I suppose it's a way of describing it at the time, which he would have understood, or the people would have potentially understood.
And we also have to bear that in mind, Jay, because that's a very good point. Of course, he's writing with the mindset of somebody from the 16th century, of course, not somebody from the 21st. So the way that he would portray things and describe things. So yeah, definitely a very good point, that one, brother. Yeah. What do you think, Steve?
Is it the same as what what you lads are saying. It's just remarkable how it all sort of knits together with what he says. But yeah, it has to be. I think.
Can we get a fascinating from you for this one? Can we?
Epic.
Can you give us a fascinating?
It is.
It's Steve's trademark, by the way. That
Absolutely fascinating. Well, it is though, isn't
We've
it?
all
Do
got
you know
one
what I
there.
mean?
We've all got the words that we like to
Yeah,
I suppose to use.
That's very true.
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, totally true. Yeah,
Could I just
You've
pick
said
up
it.
on something, Dave? if that's
absolutely.
right?
Go for it, Steve. Yeah,
I'm not sure if you got anything down for this, but you know the numbers on the I can't pronounce it.
the quatrains.
Quatrains. That's it. I was
On the
going to say another
quatrains.
word. Yeah. I was watching a documentary about this code breaker. I can't remember his bloody name. I should have wrote it down. And he reckons that every number on the quatrain
Of the quatrain.
is specific to the date of the prediction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's coded. Okay.
So he's got a coded
yeah.
date on all
Yeah.
of the quatrains. Okay, that's
Yeah.
quite interesting.
Not just that, the century of which he says it. So I don't mean centuries in year. I mean a century is in groups of 100s. So
Yeah.
the century is relevant that it stands in, and the actual number of the quatrain, as well as the verse numbers. Apparently, yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the just going back to the Hitler one, I think it was 35, wasn't it? Which I think is when he
Yeah, quatrain number 35. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
And a
It's
few
just- I
others.
think when he
That's when he
rose to
became
power,
power,
wasn't it?
35.
Yeah.
I think it
Started
maybe
in 33.
Yeah,
33
you start
started.
hearing didn't you,
Wasn't
about Hitler, but it wasn't until 35 that was that when he became.
Wasn't that the Night of the Broken Glass, 1935? Isn't that when he basically became Führer?
Crystal Night.
Didn't he
Crystal
become
Knight.
chancellor? He basically became chancellor first, didn't he? Though he became
was
Yeah, he
Chancellor
became
first,
chancellor. Yeah.
and then just assumed full power, didn't he, from chancellor?
Yeah, that was
Somebody
later,
be
wasn't it?
Googling
It
in
was
the comments.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, brilliant.
But still, that's spot on, Steve. 35. Yeah,
That's
I think that. Yeah, it's good
Fair
point.
enough.
Oh, we got a legitimate fascinating then from him. Okay, Steve,
Not a
did
false one.
you do your looking around into Mother Shipton? Did you at all?
I did a little bit.
Okay, so do
Yeah.
you want to bring us? Let's chat about Mother Shipton. Do you want to take it? Go for it, buddy.
Yeah, no worries. So, Mothership. Well, her full name was Ursula Southhill or Sowen Hill, more commonly known as Mother Shipton, who lived in Knaresborough in England, which is not very far from where I am. So that's why I've chosen to do Mother Shipton. She was born to her mother, who was 15 years old at the time, in 1488. So Mother Shipton was born in 1488, and she lived to a ripe old age of 73, I think it was, passing away in 1561. So basically, she's Britain's most famous prophetess. I think that's how you say it. And I have here. I won't go into her background too much because it's not irrelevant, but I will do. So she was born in the cave where she lived in Knaresborough, and there's a little wishing well there, and the water that comes over the wishing well, it petrifies everything that it touches, and as she was growing up in her teens to her early 20s, she would make medicines and things like that and sell them at markets and travellers and things like that. She got married. She eventually got married when she was around about 24, 25, I think, to a Mr. Shipton. He sadly passed. Sorry, go on.
Dr. Shipton, no.
No,
Shipton. Sorry.
no, he was a carpenter. Yeah,
Yes. Wasn't is it Harold Shipton the most
Harold
prolific
Shipton, that's the one.
murderer in the UK, isn't
Yeah.
he?
She was pretty.
Yeah, that's
I
her.
would.
Yeah.
She was a good-looking gal.
Oh, that's the thing, though. She wasn't.
Darling.
She had twisted legs. She had extremely severe scoliosis of the spine, hunchback, massive, huge nose, and she got the nickname of being a witch, basically. Her husband died. He passed away, and a lot of the locals sort of blamed her for it, just because of the way she looked and the medicines and things that she were making. But it wasn't until sort of later life that she began giving predictions to people and things like that. And there's supposedly 13 fulfilled prophecies that she says. One of them's a Great Fire of London, 1666. Another one is the readmission of Jews to England. The radio, telephone, internet, submarine vehicles. The list is endless, really. But I've chosen I've got her full prophecy poem, but I just want to read a couple of verses out, if that's all right. So I've never read poetry before, so you'll have to bear with me. So the first one goes: "A carriage without horse shall go. Disasters fill the world with woe. In London, Primrose Hill shall be its centre hold a bishop's see. Around the world men's thoughts shall fly, quick as the twinkling of an eye. In waters shall great wonders do. How strange, and yet it shall come true." So obviously, that first one can be attributed to the Fire of London, 1666. Also, another verse here: in water, iron then shall float as easy as a wooden boat. Gold shall be found in stream or stone, in land that is yet unknown. Water and fire wonders do, and England shall admit a Jew. And then there is, I thought this part was quite interesting. And now a world in uncouth rhyme of what shall be in future time. For in the wondrous far off days, the women shall adopt a craze to dress like men and trousers wear, and cut off their lovely locks of hair, then ride astride with brazen brow as witches on a broomstick now. Then love shall die and marriage cease, and nations wane as births decrease. The wives shall fondle cats and dogs, and men live much the same as hogs. That's quite funny, that one. And then there's just the last one that I find quite intriguing is in 1926, build houses light of straw and sticks, and roaring monsters with manna top do seem to eat the verdant crop. The men shall fly as birds do now, and give away the horse and plough. When pitchers live with movements free, when boats like fishes swim the sea, when men like birds shall scour the sky, then half the world blood drenched shall die. So
World War II. What was that? Aircraft, submarines, everything through.
Yeah. And then just the last part, it goes on to say, "For then shall mighty war be planned, and fire and sword sweep the land. But those who live the century through, in fear and trembling this will do, flee to the mountains and the dens, to bog and forest and wild fens. For storm shall rage and oceans roar, when Gabriel stands on sea and shore. And when he blows his horn, all worlds shall die and new be born." So...
Right, you're scaring me now, Steve. I'm going to have to kick you off the panel.
Well, I was getting into that.
It's good. That's exactly. No. Well read. If you're not reading poetry before, especially live on stream, it's just all about the pattern, isn't it? In the structure of the poem and keeping to that. Yeah.
And
you've missed your calling in life, Steve. That's what you should do for a living, brother.
Yeah, I should set up a YouTube channel doing poetry.
Or like a limerick writer.
Yeah, very much so. But I mean, she a lot of people believe that she's just a legend and that it's a myth. But as when her husband passed away, and people realized that she was doing these readings and telling people when they were going to die, or if they were, going to, something special was going to happen in their life. Excuse me. Obviously, a lot of it was seeming to come true with locals and things like that. The word spread, and people would come from miles and miles around to Knaresborough to visit Mother Shipton and get a reading off of her. But it wasn't until I think it was John Ingleby or Thomas Ingleby, who sort of owned Knaresborough at the time, basically decided that the wishing well and the story of Mother Shipton could generate some nice money, because people were scared to go to that area, obviously because of the wishing well and turning things to stone and things like that. So yeah, it's fascinating.
They realised there were profits from tourism that could be made, and they got on that bandwagon. Yeah.
Well, it has to be said, it's the UK's oldest paid attraction as well, is Mother Shipton's Cave. Now, stick in a couple of points that Steve didn't go into, just for the sake of like filling in gaps, I suppose. Yeah, she allegedly lived in a cave, and the prophecies were first published in 1641. Her mother was called Agatha Soothtail. That's a nice name. And like Steve said, she was born during a violent thunderstorm. I was born deformed and ugly with a hunchback and bulging eyes, as Steve says. And that she cackled instead of cried when she was born. As soon as she was born, like most babies will cry, she cackled instead. And as she did that, the previously raging storm ceased. So it was born in a thunderstorm. She was born, started cackling. And as soon as she'd done that, this raging storm ceased. She became a herbalist for the local town. Her husband was called Toby Shipton, and she married him near York in 1512. She moved into the town with her husband until he died 2 years later. They were only married for 2 years. And then, like Steve said, she moved back into the cave she was born in because townsfolk blamed her for his death, claiming that like she was a witch, and she was also grieving. And she was. It's because of her that they sort of like a dame in pantomimes, because the original dame was like her being mimicked, was Mother Shipton being mimicked in the UK ever since. She also made one prediction that I'll point out, and this is why a lot of them are considered to be fictional, the Mother Shipton ones. But of course, we'll run it up the flagpole, see who salutes it, kind of thing. She said, "The world to an end shall come in 1881." Wrong, lady, wrong. A couple of other things. She's got a moth named after her, Mother Shipton's moth. And on each of the wings, it looks like the profile of the hag's face, apparently. I can't see it, but then I don't do pareidolia, which is why I'm a paranormal investigator. Okay. And says, like Steve says, people hang things in the petrifying well. There's a petrifying well at Mother Shipton's Cave, and it's because the minerals in the water are so rich, apparently. So everything in the water calcifies or petrifies and turns to stone. I've got a couple of pictures I'm going to show them, because that's what we do on Mystery Machine. We like that. We're very visual kind of beasts. This is Mother Shipton's cave. I will quickly show you.
Excellent.
You're gonna like this. You're gonna like. Here we go. Get ready for this one. I'd live there. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. Can I just say though, like liking videos and things like that. Yeah. The place where I go is literally I can throw a stone to hit that cave. That's how close I am to that area. It's literally on the other side of the river to there.
Okay.
And it's fascinating. There's tunnels and caves and all sorts of things all around that gorge area. It's fascinating. It really is.
I assume it's just to do with the.
No, I was just going to say, be careful, Steve. There might be a copyright issue. It's Damien who goes off on segues. He's the tangent man on this panel, not you, brother.
That's it, tangent man. There you go. That's the name, isn't it?
We'll have to get him a cape, get him an outfit with a T on the front. But you got to be careful. People might think it means something else.
Oh, he's somewhere off in the distance that way.
Tangent man. Okay, that's well, Damien. We'd say we love you, baby.
But anyway.
I'll show you this because I know that you kind of people like this kind of thing. This is some of the petrified I nearly said remains. I suppose they are in a way.
Oh yeah. Nice.
I take it there's I was going to say there's a layer in a layer in the rock strata basically that in that region, and that leads itself to forming these caves and tunnels, etc. in that area, I assume.
It's got so many minerals in that water. It's unbelievable. It would take like a normal sized teddy bear. It would take around about 3 weeks for that to be fully like calcified. Something small like a little, like a little key ring teddy type thing. Less than a week to calcify. Okay. Yeah.
It's interesting how they everything. You think, oh yeah, the water turns stuff to stone. Oh yeah. Well, actually, it's got high mineral content that does actually calcify things relatively, really quickly compared to flowing sources of water. So it's actually spot on, which is it was great.
I'm going to hazard a guess here and say that those headphones aren't contemporary with the 16th century. I could be wrong. Interesting though, isn't it?
Yeah, the Victorians used to use it as a like a little health spa. We used to go there, drink all the water and things like that.
Hey! They used to go there to get stoned. All right, sorry. I'll get me coat.
I like that.
Yeah, Damien perked up then for a second. What? Can I go?
Expensive to get in though. So, yeah,
nice.
It's nice.
You should go and set up a business doing bottled mineral water from there. It's probably full of minerals, isn't it? That's what people want in bottled water. It wouldn't be a bad idea. It'd probably sell quite well.
If it's that high in minerals that it turns things into stone, do you want to be drinking that though?
Well, I don't know, do you? But your body surely processes those minerals and it doesn't allow them to calcify inside your internal organs. Otherwise, you'd already be dead.
Yes, we can only hope so, Damien.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It'll only calcify non-living matter, won't it? It won't calcify living because they'll absorb the minerals, I would imagine, to some extent. But anyway.
There's the joke trampled all over.
But this is a myth, though, right? I mean, this is like Robin Hood or King Arthur. It's been based on a real character, but it's not. I always thought this wasn't. This was just one of those stories.
No, she allegedly existed.
I believe she existed, but so did King Arthur. It doesn't mean he pulled Excalibur out of a stone, or
doesn't mean he didn't.
I do think most myths probably have some basis in history.
Yeah, of course
you don't have.
I agree completely, and I'm sure this did as well.
Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence.
No, but we also do live in a world where reality is relatively prevalent.
And that's absolutely correct. So for more reality, tune into Jamie's channel, Star Trek.
There's no reality on Star Trek.
It doesn't. There you go. I'll throw one then. But hold on. But even I think, therefore I exist. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I think, therefore I am. Is if you think about the computer simulation theory, do you exist, or are you just a simulation
There's a tangent.
being?
You're not going off on a tangent.
Anyway, so that is a huge tangent. But anyway.
Do you know what, Damien? We got a little bit of time to kill. Feel free, brother. Off you go. Let your freak flag fly.
No, I was rather than going into full tangential mode, I was just going to leave that little seed, that tangential seed there. Yeah,
you do live planting seeds.
Yeah.
It seems to me that the fact that this became the world's oldest paid attraction, should be a bit of a red flag. And God, my nose is itchy. And you know, I don't think this is real. But,
where are the where were poems actually published?
Oh,
where? What did you say, Damien? Where?
Yeah, where are poems published? If she didn't exist, how have we got published poems?
It was 1 second. Bloody hell.
Well, they came out in 1641.
Yeah.
This woman has inspired loads of stories, because I mean, there's a Marvel witch character that's named Agatha, and that's supposedly after Shipton. There's
I have got to
story
say
of
this though.
the
Her book of prophecies. Her book of prophecies, right? I have got to point this out. So sorry about that. It's notable in that the language in it isn't 16th century, so that's why a lot of people consider it to be fake. The way that it's put across, the wording of it, it's not contemporary with the time.
What was the Terry Pratchett book as well, where it's the Angel and Satan? They did a series not long ago with David Tennant and Michael Sheen.
I've read a lot of the Terry Pratchett ones. I can't think of the one you're thinking of. But,
I can't think what it's called now.
It's Discworld, isn't it?
That's supposedly inspired by Shipton as well. The main character in that was the woman that had written down a bunch of these prophecies that were coming true. And one of the prophecies was the end of the world, and the birth of the Antichrist and all that, and that's supposedly based on this character.
I've got a good tip for any potential prophecy people that would like to make some prophecies and become one of these prophets predicting the future in years to come. Don't make prophecies about the end of the world. If it doesn't happen, if it doesn't happen, you're wrong. If it does happen, no one's around to know you were right. Yeah. So there's no point in prophesizing the end of the world. You only lose by making that statement.
He also mentions that when he does mention the end of the world, what a lot of people don't read into is that there's an entire new civilization before the so-called end of the world, which is known as the Brodde civilization, Brodde, come into power. Then there'll be centuries of complete peace after all this that we're going through. Apparently, centuries of peace, and then the Brodde civilization. And it's round about then. So if we've got several centuries of peace and all that lot, I think we're going to be all right for the time being, kids.
Is that after the New World Order's culled? That's after the New World Order's culled the population to 500 million, and then we're all living in peace and harmony, like the murals at Denver International Airport.
He doesn't mention the New World Order culling the population, though.
I say if we're in a period of peace at the moment, there's an awful lot of war for a period of peace, isn't there? I mean, that's if we were in that period of peace now.
No, Jay. What you're saying is, sorry, brother. After all this, we got a lot more crap to come between a big conflict between the East and the West, mind you. He does say that. Then several centuries of peace.
That's an old story, though. I mean, that's basically the end of the world and the story of the Bible as well, isn't it? That's
the end of days.
We get the end of the world, and then heaven is made on earth, and that's an old.
Behold a pale horse kind of stuff.
Story,
I'm always a bit more wary of prophecies about war as well, because if you just study history, you can pretty much predict that we're going to fight with each other at some point about something. It happens so regularly about. You know what I mean? Like the primary reason is generally religion or money or resources. It's generally ideology or money.
Pretty much predict the Iraq War, and he said that we would fight in the Middle East over black gold.
Yes, he did. Yeah,
that's a pretty good prediction, wasn't it?
Yeah,
we did. Yeah,
spot on. Yeah. But of course, Iraq was all about. Sorry. What was it? Iraq was all about WNDs, and Afghanistan was all about women's rights.
Yeah, and the Kuwait invasion was about freedom, not about Kuwait's gold money, Kuwait's oil.
Okay, so we've had a go at not had a go at. We've discussed. I said discussed. We have discussed Nostradamus, Mother Shipton. There've been various other prophets, prophetesses, seers, soothsayers, and others over the years that people can look. You can look at all them lot, but it's not just the remit of people that have been weird and wacky individuals from the past. It's also down to program makers, TV shows, movies, and various other things that we all know and come to love. It's part of our culture, I suppose, in many ways, and some of them are really big ones. So I think it would be fun and wholly relevant, given a lot of the more recent events that have happened in the world, that we mention some of these things. So who wants to take it? Because I can see you're all chomping at the bit. Not you, Steve, because you never know when to shut up. Who wants to go first?
I think we're going to mention The Simpsons.
Oh, yes.
Very much so.
So there's been over 700 episodes of The Simpsons, which is something we should throw out there first. But during those 700 episodes, they've predicted a few things that's quite hard to just dismiss. 9/11 is freaky. In the one video where they they discuss, or that I talk about 9/11. Lisa's holding a program, and it's is it $9? And then there's a picture of the Twin Towers in the background that makes it look like 9/11.
Yeah.
They've got the Donald Trump going down the escalator, waving.
Yeah, with Homer stood behind him.
President,
famous sort of him, and obviously Donald Trump becoming president. Donald Trump becoming president makes me laugh though, because Matt Groening actually talked about that at the time. They said, "Well, you predicted it. Did you actually think this would happen?" And Matt Groening was, "No. We thought of the most ridiculous, stupid thing we could think of. We wanted just somebody ridiculous to be president. So we thought Donald Trump, because that'll never happen."
Didn't happen.
And then it did, because we were taking the
say never.
piss.
Yeah.
But there are quite a few events. You guys want to throw in any others?
The one that gets me is the texting from the mobile phone with the predicted text: beat up Martin, eat Martha. The video calling as well, and I can't think of the
you give a little bit of a frame of reference, Steve, rather than just examples for people that might not have seen the episode. I mean, the 9/11 is an obvious one.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. So. Oh, flipping heck. Yeah, it's the bullies, isn't it? Do you know? I can't place it. I can't.
Yeah, mate. We'll move on.
Okay, so any other examples? I mean, The Simpsons nailed it, but there's also some in Back to the Future, isn't there?
There's a few in Back to the Future.
Yeah,
there's a few Star Trek
9/11
as well. They predicted loads of technology.
Well, go on then. Go for it.
Search for Spock. No, sorry, the Voyage Home. Scotty invents transparent aluminium. I'm not saying aluminum. I don't care how many Americans are watching. Aluminium. That's actually an invention. That's actually been invented. It's a thing. Transparent aluminium. And obviously they predicted mobile phones.
I thought
hypo sprays.
We just don't put
transparent aluminium.
I thought the only way they were experimenting with like stealth tech was like quasi crystals, was the way they were like trying to make tanks invisible. But you're saying they've actually made a transparent form of the metal aluminium. I've got to look at what they've done to do this. Okay.
The hypo spray is a thing now, and it's actually used to deliver certain medicines so that you don't have to break the skin. That was a Star Trek prediction. Warp travel, the Abakier warp drive is now an actual, well, it's not a real thing yet, but it's theorized as being a possible
theoretical
way of breaking
physics for a warp drive is sound. There is no flaw in the theoretical physics for a warp drive.
The math works completely.
The math works,
A physicist recently said it's moved out of the realm of science fiction and into the realm of engineering.
Yeah.
No, out of the realm of theoretical physics and into the realm of engineering. Says we understand physics, now we just need to figure out how to do it, because actually doing it's a bit more complicated. But it's completely theoretical, holograms, things like projecting energy from space to the Earth is something that's we're moving into now, and that's something that's predicted in Star Trek in '68.
We've managed to create teleporters. We haven't actually teleported anything as complex as a human being, a multicellular organism, but we have actually managed to technically transport something across space from one side of a room to another, only on the atomic level. But that basically means the Chinese have done it in space. Destruction of the original, and then the creation of the new one as a replica of the destroyed original in a completely different part of the space-time continuum. So actually, technically, we could almost argue it's not even teleportation. It's actually
photocopying.
Yeah, it's like redistributing matter across space and time.
Yeah, demolecularization and then remolecularization.
It is pretty much exactly as Star Trek explains the teleporter.
Yeah.
But anyway,
well, Star Trek make a few jokes about that. There's two William Rikers. There's a Will Riker and Pete Riker, because there was a transportation error, and he's basically his transport signal bounced off the inner ionosphere of a planet, so he rematerialized on the planet, but he also materialized back on the Enterprise. So there was two Rikers knocking around.
I don't remember that episode. I can't profess to be an expert on Star Trek or anything like that. But did they know whom was which? Did they have the real one on board?
No, because Riker should have had an evil goatee, because that is traditional in sci-fi when there's an evil. But he actually wasn't evil. But they came back to the same planet years later, and they just found him on the surface. But he was actually in Deep Space Nine later, because he then he sympathised with the Maquis, but he turned up on Deep Space Nine pretending to be Will Riker, and then was like, oh, no, it's Pete. I keep saying Pete Riker. I'm not sure that's right, but he took his middle name anyway.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was the thing. There's like, are you actually really still you if you've been through a transporter on Star Trek? Because your body gets destroyed one end and then recreated on the other. Is it still you?
Yeah.
No,
and that's the same
not.
argument
That's the argument. It's not you. Exactly that. Yeah, it isn't that you're not the same copy that was the other side of the original to the you are basically being remolecularized. So it's like your DNA is being copied and you are being cloned or you're being created again. Yeah.
Well, that's what happens. That's what happens when you get older, isn't it? Because you can't produce the cells like you used to. You haven't got the same amount of elasticity, and as your cells die and you shed those cells and you get older, although you are you're not really the you that you used to be, kind of thing. You know.
No, your cellular regeneration is slowing at a what's the word? An inverse exponential basis, basically.
So I like that.
An inverse exponential.
Yes, inverse exponential.
By breathing oxygen, the oxygen-free radicals destroy every cell in your body slowly. The alternative, though, is death in 5 to 7 minutes. So I'll take.
So what are you going to do, Steve? What are you going to do? Are you going to be a different person in 7 minutes' time? Are you going to die?
I'm always a different person in 7 minutes' time. But
don't we know it? We do the streams with you. We know that only too well. That's an interesting list, that, Jay, because there was a fair few that you sort of like rattled off there before Nutcase underneath you went off.
It goes on and on. I mean, 2001: A Space Odyssey. It just goes on and on and on. To be honest,
do you think that's because in order for basically you need to have the imaginative side. You need to have the sort of the creative humans thinking outside of the box about these new ideas for technologies. Then you get perhaps the less creative, the more mathematically minded, the engineers to then figure out how to build it.
I think a lot of it comes from films.
You need
anyway.
the creative ideas comes from the film and TV, but then engineers then work off of those ideas to.
So I would argue, sorry, Damien, I would argue that because these type of things have then sort of come to pass, that even if they weren't conscious of it, the writers in their way have become prophets, or rather, they've sort of predicted what will happen, even in media. Then, not Nostradamus, Gene Roddenberry, or whoever for that matter. In a way,
look at Arthur C. Clarke. He predicted satellites. He's basically put down of kind of inventing them. That his mind experiment when he was writing his book sort of then led to somebody going, "That's a good idea. Let's do that." It's like but his works had several sort of things that he supposedly invented. A mobile phone that was supposedly inspired by some bloke who liked Star Trek, and he basically went, "We need to do that. I want to communicate it." But that was actually I'll talk about a chap in a minute with John Watkins, who also predicted them that even before the telephone was invented.
Wow.
But I mean, I think that's the point, isn't it? So you look at Jules Verne in his works, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. What was the one to the moon? I forget what it was called, but he basically had a thing about us going to the moon, and that was written in the 1880s.
A Voyage to the Moon or something.
A Voyage to the Moon or something like that, yeah. And Voyage to the Centre of the Earth, which was not so close, but spurred a load of conspiracy theories. So but there's like these things that I think creation is 50% imagination and 50% when we create something, when somebody invents something, you need that imagination there to begin with to sort of envisage what you want to get to, if that makes sense. So without the imagination of some of these people being inspired by things like Gene Roddenberry just came out of his head, that then have the technical expertise to then make it happen. That's not really Gene Roddenberry predicting things as much as
it's actually more than that. He's influencing it. He's influencing the way society is progressing with his TV, media. It's
Fascinating. Should talk about
But
this John Watkins chap.
That's not to say he would know that it would take.
No,
Would it?
No,
It doesn't mean he knows that just because he's sort of writing it that he knows it's going to take hold. Like, you know, it could quite easily have flopped and been dropped in TOS. We call it TOS. We mean the original service, people. But no, go and wash your mouth out. The next generation wouldn't exist. It wouldn't exist, would it? You know, I've heard all sorts of stuff, man. All that stuff like that. Is the original Star Trek isn't Star Trek. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it really is. Because that's where it comes from.
Star Trek. Other than the Orville. The Orville's the most Star Trek. But the original series is the cornerstone.
It's where it came from, whether you like it or not, people, whether you like it or not. So Nostradamus. Sorry, go on, Damien.
I just wanted to on that note just mention a film that I think that's quite clever, Paul. The film about the alien Paul. I think that may be very similar to perhaps what actually happened. Maybe if there was a survivor of the Roswell crash. Do you know what I mean?
If you've got a sense of humor like he has.
Yeah, fantastic. I love the things that he says, like Agent Mulder. Who came up with I came up with that idea. In order to drip feed the public. Yeah, pictures of his face on lunch boxes so that when two species do meet, you won't. Yeah, try and kill me, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I just like some of the touches in that film, especially related to that particular topic about disclosure through film and media.
Yeah. No, it is. Relevant to the point. Just before we move back to Nostradamus, can I just talk with this John Watkins guy?
Yeah, relevant to the point. That's where I was going with it. Yeah,
okay, cool. Okay. Well, I'll just throw it out there. So this John Elfrith Watkins was in Indianapolis in 1900, and some of his prophecies were, and I'll just list them off. He predicted digital color photography. He didn't actually call it digital, but he basically described exactly how it would work, about like scanning it and turning it into pixels, and he even described a microchip. That Americans would get taller over the centuries, but this is all he was predicting what the world would be like in 2000. He predicted mobile phones. This was the mobile phone. The phone had been invented, but this was actually 15 years before Alexander Graham Bell made the first coast-to-coast phone call. So he talked in his predictions about people somebody sitting in the middle of the Atlantic being able to phone his wife in California. This was, but like I say, that was 15 years before even the first coast-to-coast phone call was made. He predicted pre-prepared meals that would be bought and sold in shops, just like your local butcher. He predicted that the American population growth would slow, and he said that the population of the US would be about 350 million by the year 2000. But the reason why that's weird was actually, considering the growth at the time from 1900 when he was in, the population of America should have been nearer a billion if it had carried on at the same population growth. So the fact that he predicted it would slow was interesting. And
he'd obviously predicted the rate that it would slow reasonably accurately.
He didn't get far off.
A relatively accurate population estimate for a specific year in the future. So I'm quite on board with that in terms of the level of quality of that prediction. Okay.
He predicted hothouse veg and food would become a thing, basically, and he even described how heating the ground using he basically talked about using greenhouses, but on mass scale to produce food. He described television. He described how man would see around the world cameras connected between thousands of miles. He predicted tanks. He said that there would be these huge forts on wheels that would be able to move as fast as trains. Now, even though Leonardo da Vinci predicted sort of tanks and sort of drew tanks, this guy, John Watkins, went much further and went into much more detail about what a tank would look like. He predicted that there would be bigger fruit, and that we've actually now created a lot of different variants of apples and things that are much larger than what they had back in 1900s.
Yeah.
He predicted express trains that would travel at 150 plus miles an hour. So he predicted fast trains.
Wow.
He did get a couple of things wrong. He did say that X, C, and Q would be dropped from the alphabet because they're unnecessary. I like how he then says they're unnecessary, using the word unnecessary that has two C's in it. So,
Yeah.
anyway.
If that sentence had at least one of each of those letters, that would have been perfect then.
Yeah,
But anyway.
exactly. He said that
He'd have
people
nailed it, wouldn't he? Then that's like
Yeah,
nailed
exactly.
it.
He said that people would walk an average of 10 miles a day every day. And he got that wrong. But then I sort of think about how we're all supposed to do 10,000 steps every day. I think he might have just sort of just missed the Nile a bit, but he told me to predict that. He predicted there would be no cars in major cities by the year 2000. But even though he was off, he's not far off.
Yeah.
No,
we are banning cars from cities.
Yeah.
And he also said there'd be
and
no.
stuff.
Yeah, it's really creepy. There'd be no flies, mosquitoes, or cockroaches by the year 2000. Would have exterminated them all, which again is wrong. But actually, we have got large-scale programs. Do you know we do this thing where we'll release a load of male mosquitoes into a population, and it makes all of them, but it makes them all make them shoot blanks basically. So it lowers the population of the mosquitoes by loads, and lowers malaria rates by a factor of 50. So that's something we actually have tried to do. So what do you guys think? He made a crap load of predictions that came on bang on, and that's pretty much all of his predictions that he made, and almost all of them are true, have come true.
Yeah, it's very close, isn't it? There's not much.
Yeah, so he's on a par with Nostradamus, isn't he? Then forgetting, because not a lot of Nostradamuses were correct. It's only Mother Shipton who he mentioned who's like borderline full of shit, really.
Yeah.
But the point is, this guy never claimed to be predicting the future. He said this was actually something in the 1900s, and it was a story that he'd done to predict what the year 2000 would be like. It was published on page 8 of the Ladies' Home Journal, which I just love.
Also, it was specifically, this wasn't like a group of things. This is what the year 2000 is going to be like, and it was one big splattering of predictions for the year 2000. Then is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. But he actually said, I know this is all going to sound very impossible, but I have consulted with the giants or the leading the country's leading engineers and scientists to come up with these predictions. So this wasn't under a big hat.
These were just
stroking his
statements
beard,
he made.
predicting the future.
They were just things that he said to friends, colleagues, statements he made. They weren't. He wasn't going. Well, I'm going to tell you all about the future. He's just like, oh, I think this.
He made predictions, but he actually did put this. This was a newspaper article. He actually wrote for this newspaper's sister publication. So he was a writer. It was a story, but it was an educated guess of where he believed. It was tomorrow's world in 1900, basically. This is an educated guess. But if you look at the prophecies he made, they sound really creepy. But actually, when you understand where he was coming from and what he was trying to do, it's an educated guess, not a prophecy. It's based on an understanding of where science was heading, and he's made 100, but he's made it a century ahead, and he's gone pretty much all bang on.
But then look at George Orwell, 1984. He makes some similar sort of prophecies in about the same sort of period, doesn't he? It's about the early 1900s, wasn't it, when he wrote 1984, and he's prophesying about the year 1984. And Big a lot Brother. Of those predictions are very similar. Big Brother Society, CCTV, you're watched all the time. Food like sausages that don't contain actually any real nutritional value. They're just, crap processed foods. So he's another similar that's making similar predictions to this gentleman. The thing I'd say about these two is they're only predicting sort of the short term future, the sort of 100 years, aren't they? After they were, they wrote their predictions. Nostradamus is predicting stuff several hundred years into the future with startling accuracy. So you couldn't say the same argument for Nostradamus as you could for these two in terms of just being able to see where the increases in technology were heading. I don't think. Yeah,
but in saying that the jump in technology given over the years, if you look at the jump in technology in the last, even less than 100 years, in comparison. The jump technologically, and I wouldn't say evolutionary because I think that the two don't go hand in hand, quite frankly. But as far as technology goes, in the last 100 years, has been something like tenfold what it was in the preceding century.
Yeah,
at least.
Is that because of the two wars?
That 95% of our current technology was invented in the last 100 years.
Yes, because of the wars. That's exactly That has to be.
Would that not probably always be the case? Because surely, if you're always expanding
No,
the
'cause I think it's
frontiers of
stagnant.
technology, then the technology that you're currently using in the current generation will probably always be like 99% plus within the last 100 years, because you're always pushing the boundaries, and
I
it's
don't think
always
you
on
are,
an
though, mate. Because if you think
exponential.
about it, I mean, if you look, you can argue after the Roman Empire, we went backwards for 500 years.
Yeah, absolutely
yeah,
correct. The
Dark
Dark
Ages,
Ages,
yeah.
Dark Ages, yeah.
We just wandered around
Yeah.
with the wheel, and
We'll say that
couple of thousand years.
it's notable that the sheer amount of technological advances that have been made and the jump leaps forward in technology since 1947. Coinky dinky.
Well, is that an interesting year? It's almost like we might have
coincidental?
recovered something.
Since 1947. Now, I don't want to give the game away, but does anybody in the side chat know what might have happened in 1947 that we might be referring
What the
to?
hell are you doing watching this channel?
Hey? Are we playing with you?
Turn it off immediately if you don't know what
Seamless
happened in
link to last
1947.
week, yes.
Yeah, if you do not know what happened in 1947, you really need to give your head a wobble. Anyway, a big chunk of technology. I don't know why I'm saying that. Everybody's going to unsubscribe for that particular comment. But a big chunk of technology came about after 1947, after the US did not recover alien technology from the desert in New Mexico. It didn't happen. All you got to see is the last stream, because we fill you right in on that particular topic too, because that's what we're like. Or do we? Because is there going to be a future stream on that? I would say yes. So get ready for that one.
I predict there is going to be a future stream on that. Mark my words, boys. I predict there will be.
I predict.
And as we discussed before, that's not a prediction, because we already discussed it. It's an educated guess, really, is what that is, Steve.
Yeah, you're right there.
So educated guesses are predictions, differences. It's fairly self-explanatory, really, that one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose an educated guess is extrapolating out technology improvements based on past improvements, isn't it? You're just extrapolating out, I suppose. Whereas making startling predictions about the future, I think only perhaps Nostradamus, someone that can fall into that category, because of the sheer length of time into the future that some of his predictions are accurate. It's astounding.
Well, I think we're going to find out in the next 12 months how accurate he was.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
Yeah.
And before you move
the 2022 predictions,
yeah, one sec, brother. I will add this also as well. Is the further into the future, the more accurate his predictions are, the more things he gets right as well. Apparently, so the things closest to his time, which is I just find that it's a bit of a strange fact that the things further into the future, the ones more relative to us. Stevie, are you scared?
You'd think it would be the opposite.
No, because hopefully, we'll all be us guys anyway. We'll all be dead when.
Oh no, this is happening next year, brother.
Oh, is it?
We're all screwed.
It is, yes. 2022.
2020 and 2021 were bad.
What is it?
Just wait.
Jamie, can you do me a massive favour, please? And can you inform us about what this is about? Because you look like you need to. Go for it, brother.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Well, it's quite a long list.
Go for it.
And none of it is good.
Oh, God.
The US dollar will collapse. There'll be a massive inflation increase that will lead to the US dollar collapsing and the yen taking over as the world's economic power.
Oh, God.
Putin's going to be assassinated. It's going to be a stormy night when he does get assassinated as well. So he's already survived 5 assassination attempts. So to be honest, I wouldn't give you evens on that. There'll be a hurricane.
I probably wouldn't either.
Yeah. There's going to be a hurricane that will hit France again, considering global warming. Yeah, that's going to happen. That will lead to mass starvation. AI is going to attack humanity. And there will be an explosion in the Mediterranean that will either be possibly a volcano or possibly some sort of nuclear accident. There's an asteroid shower that's going to destroy the Earth. The funny thing is that I think is that comes halfway through the predictions, but they carry on.
You think that would be the last prediction?
Oh.
There's going to be
save the best.
So let me get this right. If you think that an asteroid shower destroying the Earth is bad enough, it gets worse.
Yeah. There's going to be a nuclear bomb test that is so devastating it's actually going to physically knock the Earth off its axis, which will lead to massive climate change and worldwide disaster. We will have 3 days of darkness, possibly because we're off our axis, which will lead to a period of peace after a massive war, remembering that he's already said that the Earth is going to be destroyed by asteroids, but we'll ignore that. So 3 days of darkness, there'll be no more modern lifestyle, and 2/3 of mankind will be abandoned by God. North and South Korea will unite, and Kim Jong-un is going to have to run to China. He's going to have to get himself to China. I don't see how he would run anywhere in those Cuban heels that he wears. I think he's going to
that's a very good point, actually.
You
see, I want to see that guy not only in them Cuban heels, but in a Liberace type glittery suit with sequins. Yes. I think he'd pull that look off very well.
Solar energy is going to be used a great deal more, which is actually a pretty good prediction. But again, remembering
that's
the
just
asteroid thing.
Current technologies. That
it's
obvious that's where we're headed. Like
the solar panels aren't going to be very good anyway, mate, because he's predicted 3 days of darkness, so they're not going to work after we've been destroyed by the asteroids. He predicted commercial space travel, which is happening. Happened. A fight against global warming will lead to a worldwide conflict in 2022. UFO is going to come close to humanity and possibly make first contact. ISIS is going to trigger the Third World War, as well as global warming triggering a Third World War, and the AI attack on human race. Don't forget the AI thing.
There's a lot of possibilities, isn't there?
Not as big a problem. There's a financial crisis in Italy that leads to a Eurozone crisis. So,
and then the European Union collapsing.
Right.
Well,
I've got to say, as far as within the context of that list that you have just read out, that's not really the biggest worry, is it? That's not really, not really a concern.
Italians go, well, that's already actually basically happened because of Corona anyway. So, and China's going to become the only. Isn't that good enough? China is going to finally overtake America.
Right. So, sorry, we missed some of that. China are going to do what, brother?
Become the world superpower. They will overtake America and become the world superpower.
That makes sense.
Which is unfortunate because they're going to overtake America and become the world superpower in the same year that the Earth's going to get destroyed by an asteroid. So they're going to be like, yes, we did it. We've overtaken America. What's that in the sky? It's like...
That's it. Like
so
in January,
disappointing.
In January, America's economy collapses, which we all know is inevitable and is coming at some point in the future. It's just how long they can kick the can down the road for until, and obviously China being America's banker and owing them most of the national debt America owes China.
$1 trillion.
Yeah, it's like Is it 5 trillion? Is that it?
No, it's about it's several. It is several trillion.
Several trillion.
I thought it was a little bit higher than 5.
It's 22 trillion there, now, isn't it?
And a third of that, so about 7 and a bit trillion. They owe the Chinese. Okay.
We control about the same amount as China.
What was it? So to be fair. What was that famous quote about money? It was one of the Rothschild family, wasn't it? Give me control of a nation's credit, and I need no army.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I thought you could say then. What was that famous money quote? Makes the world go round. I thought that's where you were going to go there.
Yeah, the good old-fashioned one.
Money makes the world go
round. That probably would have been a bit of a simple quote for that much effort into telling you the quote. Although there is a track that I do quite like by Immortal Technique that uses the Rich Man's World ABBA track, but then does a verse over it. Yeah, you
played me that. That was good.
All about the powers that be.
So I'm going to fly in with this one. I've got to say, I don't know about the people in the side chat, but I will ask the panel. Am I alone in thinking that is one of the predictions I hope he gets bad wrong?
I hope he gets almost all of these badly wrong. Yeah. They're all shit.
Oh, I don't know.
Because that is a fairly shit.
Kim Jong going. That's not a bad.
I just want to say this. Considering this is predicted for the year 2022, that we are now midway through November in 2021, people. So,
we've got a lot to look forward to, haven't we?
2/3 of mankind's going to be abandoned by God. I would say 99% of mankind's already been abandoned by God. There's only the Mormons, really, that I think he'd look after. Maybe Jehovah's Witnesses.
Or conversely, the other way around.
I would actually argue that a few of these he probably is going to get right. I think Italy probably is heading towards an economic disaster.
Oh, I don't know. It might be all right. Italy.
Solar panels for the first time a couple of months ago generated more electricity in Germany than fossil fuels. They went to 51% of the power generation. And we're not
funny now is while he's disappeared to the toilet, is we all disappear off screen for when he comes back.
He's just been hit by a meteorite.
That would be brilliant.
No idea, just complete silence for when he returns. That'll teach you for going to the toilet midstream.
But if you look at the
Yeah.
scientific data that scientists would use to analyze some of these situations that he's made predictions about for 2022, obviously he's still made these predictions in the early 1500s, so it's still 500 years earlier, and that's still an astounding accuracy for these predictions. But if you looked at them now scientifically, you would make all of these similar predictions. If we know that we're going to have a serious problem with climate change, we know that the global temperature is increasing. We're hoping we can stop it at 1.5, but it's more likely going to be 2.5 degrees centigrade. We know this puts 4% more moisture in the air, which drives weather systems, which creates bigger storms, bigger hurricanes, bigger natural disasters. So we know that that's all likely because of the increased temperature. The science shows that. We know that there's probably going to be a climate war because once resources start running out because of the climate changing and people can't get food or water, people start to fight over it. Again, that's pretty much, look at history.
I think the next global war is going to be fought over water, fresh water.
Oh, it is. That's why when the owner of Nestle comes out and goes, "Well, wouldn't it be nice if Nestle owned all the water?"
Yeah,
You've got to be very worried about Nestle.
The Welsh are just like, it's not a problem. We got crap loads of the stuff. I honestly think Wales is the future Middle East. They're going to be filling up tankers and shipping water around the world in a few years. They're just going to they'll just massive tankers will just sail up to the Welsh coastline. They'll open the top and just wait for the rain to fill them, then just close the lid and go.
When we've had a heat waves in the UK, and we've had obviously the water levels of the local reservoirs have gone down. It's from Wales that we've had water repumped into the northwest, around this area. So that's already happened multiple times since the 1970s already.
The point on that, we already know due to the number of us as well. What is it now? We're closing on 8 billion. I guess we're closing in on 8 billion. That we've pretty much depleted most of the water table in most of the continents around the world because we've been draining the water table for so long for drinking water. So this is why there's so much interest in desalination plants off the north of Africa, isn't it? Because they need to find ways to get water, otherwise we're all screwed. So we do know that a lot of these things are coming, and I would make all the same predictions now. Admittedly, Nostradamus made them about 500 years ago, which is far more impressive.
The thing is,
what I'm trying to say is the science is leading. So
basically,
he will be right with a lot of these predictions.
What we need here, Damien, is before you make these prophecies, go for it, baby. Tell the world what you know, and people will look back at this video in years to come and say, that Damien fella, he nailed it.
I don't think I could make any prophecies that Nostradamus hasn't already made 500 years ago more impressively, to be honest. But I'm just saying that the science now is backing all of these predictions, basically, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'm not impressed at all. I think he's a dumbass. He basically says, why didn't you just go, the Earth is going to be destroyed by asteroids? Done. Why did he go, the Earth's going to be destroyed by asteroids? And then just keep going. But I suspect that it's
different
because
cycles.
How these have been interpreted is maybe not what's actually going to happen. I think in 2023, we might look back at it with fresh eyes and go, oh, maybe you didn't mean it, maybe you meant this.
I would also
instead.
posit like a smart ass likes to underline the fact he's a smart ass by over validating his point.
Or just throw enough crap at a subject. And
like one of them is going to be right. One of them is going to be right, yeah.
Which is the argument for The Simpsons. We
thinking typewriter and monkeys. Typewriter and monkeys.
It is exactly that,
yeah.
Put enough monkeys in a room and they'll eventually bash out the works of Shakespeare.
Or they'll come up with an Oasis song.
Yeah, exactly. But that was what the Simpsons guy said. He said, the executive producer of The Simpsons said, no, we've done 700 episodes. we quite regularly talk about stuff that is, you know, like
Current affairs.
Current affairs and things like this.
Yeah.
If we didn't get anything right, if we didn't predict anything, that would be more impressive than the stuff we did predict. If we'd have got everything wrong, that would have been more precious. But then he did go on to say, except the Trump thing, that still weirds me out.
But I like that. At least he's really honest about that when he was questioned. It's like, yeah, we took the craziest goal we could, and I couldn't believe it happened. Do you know, like that's like it just seems real, doesn't it? From Matt Groening, and you know that he's not some, you know, but he doesn't see the future. Let's put it that way. He just got lucky on a couple of predictions. You know.
And the Trump thing actually isn't that amazing, because a good 10 years before he was a Democrat, before he became a Republican. If you're a Republican and you love Trump, you do need to look at his history, because he was a Democrat for a long time.
Yeah,
he was best friends with Clinton's.
Hold on then. Didn't Lisa become president after Trump?
Yeah.
So shouldn't we next have a female president then? After Trump then? Does that mean Clinton's running again? Please no.
I don't know, mate. Well, Biden won't be with us long. So,
what do you say, Jamie?
So Biden won't be with us long. The man is going to die shortly. So there's no. He may already be dead. I think there's a weekend at Bernie's thing going on, where they're just carrying him around, like, and they've got like their hand up his back, sort of thing, just holding him up, sort of thing, like. You
know, there's Action Men with the thing where they used to have the thing with the eyes on the back. He's just got like someone like he's doing him a puppet and just moving his eyes, and he's
just keep opening and closing his mouth, and a voice comes from somewhere else on there.
He actually died several months ago, and it's just a puppet. It's just an animatronics that they've kept going.
Take the mask off. It's an alien. Simpsons done it again.
Yeah, Simpsons done it again. Yeah. You can't eat me. I've got a wife and kids. Eat them.
Any people in the side chat want to throw up any questions before we start to round it off tonight? Then please feel free to do so. Stick them in the side chat, and we'll read them out and probably.
Oh yeah, of course, Kamala.
Ruin it for you, but we'll give it a go. Sorry, Steve. I thought I was talking for a minute.
Yeah. Now it's just miles away there. Just thinking back about if Biden was to sort of pass away, it would be Kamala Harris, wouldn't it? As the next president.
I don't know, and that wasn't even remotely relevant to what I was saying. But thanks for that.
No.
15 minutes late, but you made it. So
off topic.
Anyway,
we're all doomed.
I'm playing.
I'm hoping that Nostradamus got at least one of those predictions wrong anyway. I'm hoping actually he's got at least 3 of those predictions wrong.
Yeah.
We don't really want 3 days of darkness.
Even his asteroid prediction, though, if what we now know about those 2 events, the Younger Dryas at the start and the end of the Younger Dryas, 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, probably being caused 10-degree global temperature rise in average overnight and the 300 feet sea level rise. They think of 2 asteroid impacts that are within the last 13,000 years of our history, and the geological sample shows one occurs about every 13,000 years on average, and we're pretty much overdue for one.
An asteroid impact thing, though, mate, it isn't if, is it? It's when. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
I was arguing with a couple of people today about the C word and the vaccine, and that apparently the vaccine is all going to turn. It's either going to kill us or turn us into zombies. Apparently, and they're deadly serious. So this is the 2 options. If you've taken the vaccine, you're definitely dead, or a zombie, or a dead zombie. I don't know. And I was just arguing, actually, if you're going to worry about these things, worry about the caldera under Yellowstone or asteroids or something like that, because that crap is going to kill us at some point. But worry about global warming. Don't worry about the bloody vaccine.
Okay, so there's a couple of questions that I'm going to go on about, because I don't even done in with all that kind of stuff. But Bazza, I'll highlight it, but it's going to be a difficult one to explain, because
we have to explain what a pandemic is first.
Yeah. Take your pick of many, I would say.
Something that's got a higher fatality rate than this one. If this one was planned with such a low fatality rate, it'll be something that's got a significantly higher fatality rate, rather than like a percent of the population. It's going to be like 10, 20%, and then you'll start actually seeing some culling of the population. Yeah,
it's 10 or 20% of the population if you're over 60 or 70, sorry, which is the people that they're having to pay the pensions to. So from an economic point of view, done quite well.
Yeah.
I would argue though that pandemics happen all the time. They happen every 100 years or so. This is completely on time, sort of thing. These things do happen. Governments, I don't think, planned this. The Chinese government might have caused it, but they didn't plan it. I think that what you should though is think about is how our government then takes advantage of these things when they do happen. The conspiracy theory about that it was all planned, I don't really buy. But watch what governments then do, because they will. I don't think they're competent enough to actually plan these things, but they are competent enough to take advantage of it when they happen.
Yes, removing your freedoms for a false idea of safety.
Yeah.
Right,
destroying enough small businesses so that larger businesses can take over and things like that. These things will happen, but they're not planned. I don't believe anyway. I just think they're taken advantage of. That is so not off topic, though, Basil.
Somebody take the lead on that one. Why didn't Nostradamus have a cult? Why do we think Nostradamus didn't have a cult?
Everybody should have a cult. I want my own.
He didn't go around spreading his word, did he? He kept it quite quiet and in code. I'm guessing, and sort of shied away from.
Yeah, he deliberately wrote it so that it was difficult to understand at the very least, let alone in them days, but certainly now, for fear of getting done by the church, basically, for being seen as. And you got the Inquisition going at the time as well, so he wanted to keep his head, I think.
Yeah.
To me as well, it seems like he wanted to make money. It was almost like this was a business rather than thing. He wrote the first book and it did well, so he wrote another book. And,
the Almanac,
you mean? He died quite a wealthy man. So I don't think he was I don't think he was a religious zealot or a cult type of character. If he was anyone, we haven't actually asked the question, which I don't know if somebody in the side chat would. Do we actually believe Nostradamus?
We're coming to that before we disappear, because we're getting we're just over 2 hours, so I want to round up a couple of the questions. Obviously, Highway says, "Is deja vu a person's way of seeing the future?" What do you reckon, Damo?
Deja vu, way of seeing the future. Isn't deja vu having virtually the same instant have it happen twice to you? It's like you've already had that memory of that event occurring. So to me, deja vu is more like a glitch in the Matrix, like the cat in the Matrix in the film when it sees the same cat come past the same black cat twice. I think deja vu is probably more perhaps a sign that we are in a simulated world.
Yep. I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, Steve. I don't know how much you're going to know about this one. I'm going to throw it up there for you. There you go, Steve. That's one for you. What's your opinion on Disney World's Tomorrowland and all the predictions that was made there that we've forgotten about and brought it back also over 50 years in the future?
Oh, bloody hell.
They did say there'd be flying cars and robots.
I'm not too sure on Disney's World Tomorrowland.
No, not me actually. I was like just thinking, no idea.
They kind of said that we would all have robots doing our hoovering, and we kind of do.
Yeah, right. I was just going to say that's more of a. I would put that down to being more educated guessing, really, because of the natural sort of like the way that technology follows on, I suppose, rather than prediction.
That came about because of the there was the expo, the big expo in America, wasn't there? And there's a lot and that's where the sort of Tomorrow's Land sort of came from.
I mean, in the hotel industry and the catering industry, I know that to cut down the hours of the cleaners and the chambermaids and things like that, where they're hoovering themselves, because I think it's like 18 minutes per room you get to clean a room, and most of the hotels now, like so all your Premier Inns and your Travel Lodges and your even like your Ibises and Holiday Inns all use little, the little robotic hoovers, the tiny little small ones.
I thought you were going to list all of the hotel companies.
So did I as well. Yeah,
programmable.
Golds
and Radisson,
he owns them also.
and Holiday Inn, the Holiday Express. Don't forget Holiday Express.
Ah, yeah. Crown, yeah.
Hilton's Crown, yeah.
And how famous was Nostradamus in the 1500s? Well, really, he was only well known by people that were wealthy, like working for the crown in France and various other people that had money. To commoners and the church, he was pretty much not viewed favorably. But he certainly wasn't famous. He was known, I believe. I don't know what you guys think.
His books did sell, didn't they? But they did sell at a time when nobody could read. So, I mean,
conveniently,
he was known within the wealthy.
The level of literacy was pretty low, wasn't it, in the Dark Ages? I've got a feeling. I think that was the point, wasn't it, of the regression and the literacy skills going down and the.
Yeah.
I mean, was it they say during the Dark Ages, it was the Irish that we now characterise as stupid had some of the most educated living in Europe. They were like leading the way. It's interesting how things change over time. People that were at the top, and then move down, and new people rise to the top, don't they? And it's just this is why I think that America's the next economy civilization to perhaps be ready to fall.
And then the British Empire will return, glorious like a phoenix.
It's like, we all know the
Anglo-British Empire now.
Yeah, the British Empire is like that pissed up old man in the pub who staggers about saying, "I can still do it. I can still do it." That's what it's
we
like
still
now.
box above our weight.
We always did.
That's what makes
that's
it so
good.
Great.
Very possibly Mrs. M. We sort of have covered that in a previous stream, but I'm sure I'll highlight that for you though, because you've been gracious enough to comment, so I'll put it up there for you.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, mommy.
Hello. We've talked about this one before, haven't we? I think
we have mentioned it briefly.
The
Philadelphia experiment.
That's it. Yeah.
We do need to do an episode on it probably at some point. Yeah, I'd be keen to go back to it.
I don't see why we can't do that one. Do you guys?
Good choice.
It'll just be 2 hours of me going, didn't happen.
Actually, I think it'll be 2 hours of me and you saying it didn't happen.
Spoiler alert.
But it is a topic that's a good one to cover. I would like to cover it.
Let's do it.
Okay, so rounding up, guys, Nostradamus and people who predict the future. What do we think? Let's go round the tiles. Jay, what do you think, brother? Give us your lowdown.
His predictions were really interesting, and some of them are pretty spooky in the way that, like I said, the ones you picked out were interesting. But I'm hoping he's full of crap, because his predictions for next year are rubbish. But I think it's one of those things that if you throw enough information out, I mean, he made nearly 7,000 of these predictions over his books. Was it 6,300 and something?
930 quatrain, 934 quatrains.
6,338 prophecies apparently over all the almanacs that he produced.
I'd be interested to know how many of those prophecies are incorrect, and what the percentage is between incorrect and correct, or the ratio rather. It would really be interesting.
Apparently, out of the 6,300 and something he done, 6,295 have come true.
Wow! So he's got a 90.
You just made that up.
I did. But you know yourself that 98% of statistics are made up anyway, aren't they? You know.
Yeah, I've said it once. I've said it a million
times. And the other
times.
2%, don't worry about them.
Yeah, I think it's notable as well to the amount of times that Nostradamus has. I mean, he's predicting the end of the world next year. People have said he's predicted the end of the world every few years, and Nostradamus says that there's some prediction, and then it turns out not to be accurate.
But is that because it's a misinterpretation of his prediction?
Very possibly, but that's the thing, isn't it? Then we're looking back.
We keep saying it's in the world this year. Oh, we got that wrong. Where else does he say? Oh, he says this in this one. So hold on. Oh, maybe it's this year. Maybe it's, and then it moves to next year, and we keep looking for it to say end of world 2022, end of world 2023. I don't know. I just like to read the exact.
I think so. No, I think you're right. I think we look for things. I think people like end of the world predictions, and we like these prophecies, and people get excited about it. They love the mystery. They love looking at his quite poetic way of writing things and trying to find meaning in them. It's like breaking codes and things like this. And we all want to know what the future holds. I don't think anybody can predict the future though, because I don't think it's written. So for me, was he predicting the future? No, because I don't think it's possible.
Okay. Damien, what's your take on it, my long-haired friend?
Well, he's made some startling predictions with some very accurate information in some of them, going several hundred years into the future. I tend to agree that generally I don't believe that people can see into the future and can predict the future. However, the mind is an incredibly powerful thing, and we are finding out that the more and more we understand about things, that the more and more capable the human mind is, and perhaps some people's minds are more capable than others, and perhaps people do have visions in dreams or premonitions about the future, and then they're able to write those visions down into some kind of context on paper to make these kind of predictions like Nostradamus has. So I wouldn't want to rule out that entirely, given the accuracy of a lot of his predictions.
Yeah,
Steve, what do you think?
I tend to agree with both the other two lads, to be honest. As Jay said, we are always looking for an answer or for something to fit something that we don't quite understand. And yeah, it's I think it's hard because we're thinking of what we know to put into what he wrote, if that makes sense, if you understand where I'm sort of coming from with that.
Absolutely.
But again, he's come extremely close with the Hitler thing, for instance, with the name Hister, and other things like that. It's very eerie. It is, yeah. So I'm sort of 50-50 whether or not people.
Are you sure that you're unsure?
I'm not sure about that, to be honest.
I don't think you could get
convinced. I don't know.
Don't think you could get more sitting on the fence than that.
No,
could you? 50-50. That's pretty much right. Firmly perched on the fence.
That's it, yeah.
There he is every week. And actually, normally you believe this wholeheartedly, Steve. So 50-50 for you is
well, that's the thing. I mean, you've got people saying, "Oh, it's written in the code." How do we know it was written in the code? You've got these code breakers that trying to look for patterns and things like that. But how do we know? It's like going back to the Voynich manuscript. Trying to decode that, trying to work out what.
Just want to say, for more information on the Voynich manuscript, just check out the Mystery Machine videos.
Yeah, that's it. And every person has their own way of thinking and their own way of like analyzing things and thought processes and things like that. But yeah, it's odd. It is. It's very odd. But yeah, I hope it doesn't come true next year.
Hope.
Yeah,
it would be lovely if he was wrong. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Well, out of say, for instance, there was 10, just like an arbitrary number that I'm throwing out there. But say, like in the 2022 predictions, there's 10 on that list. I hope he gets all 10 of them wrong. Really.
Yeah.
Because there's obviously the obvious ones have got massive negative connotations. Neither the ones that sound not too bad will still have a negative connotation around them. Even if our mate in North Korea fecks off to China, that's not going to be a good thing either. There's going to be something bad surrounding that, I'm sure. So getting them all wrong would be cool by me. However, just how eerily close it is. It definitely gives food for thought. It's definitely, it's thought-provoking to say the least. But because we use hindsight to interpret it to an event, we were doing that up until a certain point. However, when he started to get things right, and even in the early 20th century, people started to look towards the future. So you've also got like a precognitive understanding of what might come about and how it might be able to be associated with an event that will then come to pass, and then you aggressively or retrospectively look back at it and say, we knew that that's what he's meant because it said this and this such a thing happened. So you sort of on both sides of it, in the past or looking forward, you can attribute what you want, and you can do it looking back as well. So go on, Damo.
Yeah, we apply meaning to something that perhaps he didn't mean himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the bias of looking back retrospectively at predictions, and you can't escape that. But it's the very nature of looking back at predictions.
And also, as Dave said before, you have to realise that he's a 16th century man, and we have trying to put yourself in the shoes of a 16th century man, and the things that he had around him, or the lack of technology really that they had around at that time, to be able to think of what is,
to understand what I mean?
Yeah, it's very tricky.
Could you imagine in the 16th century having a dream, or however this worked, that he had some sort of dream about the future and then trying to describe that?
Yeah, especially your contemporaries around you try to explain it to the people around you. Yeah,
just
is that another reason why you weren't quite as vocal?
Trying to read Old English, for example, trying to read the language of previous generations within your own country that speak the same language as you, and you can't make head or tail of the language that they were using a couple hundred years ago. Language constantly evolves; it never stays the same. I mean, how many new words are there in our dictionary year on year? And that's probably the same with all languages all around the world. And basically, they all evolve away from what they were originally anyway. So. I'm just trying to say we're interpreting what we think they used language-wise at that time from other texts and applying that to him as well.
That being said, he was massively accurate, and they were eerily very descriptive about something he should know nothing about, and something that we coincidentally then can retrospectively attribute an understanding of. So we don't know.
Just really quickly before we go, I don't think we mentioned how he went about getting his prophecies. Did we say that? So water.
No.
So it was water with ink, draped a towel over the head. It was warmed up, with also spoonfuls of nutmeg as well. And as some of you guys should know, nutmeg is a little bit hallucinogenic.
There's something about nutmeg. And,
there's something medical about nutmeg, isn't there, as well? Isn't it something like a decongestive or something as well, medically? Like they use I don't know.
Turmeric's a very good analgesic. But no, there's something about nutmeg and witches or something, and the occult and nutmeg. But I'm trying to remember what it is. Somebody will tell us.
No, I can't remember.
Hallucinogenic, yeah.
Okay, so next week, what have we got in store next week, Jay? What are we sort of lined up for next week's Mystery Machine? Anything
I'm
on
going
these things?
To leave it to Damien to decide.
Oh,
but I have had the suggestion that we actually do talk a bit more about the end of the world and end of the world stuff. But Damien, I'm going to leave it to you, mate, because I decide every week, and it's not fair on you. I feel like I'm bullying you into making a decision. So
you are. Poor Damo.
Oh, really? Yeah. But anyway, okay, all right, okay, leave it up to me. I'll all right, end of the world. Okay.
Okay,
no,
then
that's what I suggested. You have to come up with something else.
Well, yes, but that's the only suggestion for the topic at this precise moment. I'll obviously think of some others.
Let's hope Nostradamus didn't predict it on a Wednesday.
Exactly. But no, there are.
I don't know. It'll get us out of having to stream.
It would, yeah. Give me a day off. I think there are lots of things with the end of the world and the predictions. Like we mentioned today, comets and supervolcanoes and micronovas and all these sorts of things that I think are interesting, and that we could that might have happened before as well.
It's a lose-lose situation for all prophesizers, though, isn't it? End of the world, like I said before, you can't win. So why bother prophesizing about it? All you're going to do is look stupid.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? Though, I suppose.
I'd love that.
That's why
Unless it's
everyone that's
just a
done
near
it looks
end of the world.
stupid, and then we're going to mock them for it.
Yeah.
But
That's the
I
beauty
think
of it.
it'd be worth talking about like Graham Hancock and the 5 cycles that he talks about, and that we're in our 5th iteration because of 4 resets that have come before. I think it'd be an interesting topic to chat about.
Yeah.
There's someone in the side chat that was saying time is an illusion. Does time really exist, or is time just a human construct we've developed in order to, to try and explain the world? The physicists, that is one of the big things about time. We don't really fully understand time exactly, and then obviously you have Einstein's theory of relativity that obviously says that, well, it's not really space and time separately, really it's space time as a singular
The same
construct.
thing,
Yeah.
singular.
And
It's all relative, dude. It's all relative.
Indeed.
Yeah, well, there you go. So no doubt you'll see what it's about next week if you tune in. So next week it's on Brief History and Mystery. So like, I'll check out that channel if you haven't already done so. Head over there and subscribe, because that's where we are every other week. We sort of bounce twixt the two, and the award for using the most amount of long words that not many people understand tonight goes to Damien. So congratulations for that one.
Ding, ding, ding.
You were
Well done, sir.
You were pulling quite a few of them out tonight.
I didn't notice.
It was absolutely fantastic. So from myself, I
language.
just want to say thanks to everybody for joining us. It's been great to have you around.
Yep, thanks
Awesome.
everyone.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you very
Brilliant.
much. As always,
you all.
guys.
Fantastic night.
Take it all, and don't let the sound of your own wheels turning drive you crazy. I'm going to say sayonara. See you next time.
Yep,
Ciao.
see you all next week.
Cheers, guys. Love you all.
Bye-bye.